corruption of power. One could only dream of being a hero, to be able to stand strong against obstacles, to protect those who were innocent, to be worth something. In this world, though, that dream can be a reality. With a population that is teeming with unique powers at every face, every child dreamed of it at some point in their lives, and no one dreamed harder than one boy who no one believed could do it. Izuku Midoriya, a quirkless 9-year-old boy who had no special powers, but so desperately wanted to become a hero. He was laughed at, mocked, and even beaten by someone he called his best friend. So why couldn't you tell me about this sooner? A woman with long green hair and pale skin pleaded with the boy sitting next to her by the campfire. He had a large bandage covering over his cheek, his hand itching the surrounding area. The shy attempt to hide behind his own emerald eyes behind his Sacramento green curls didn't work with his mother. They're just playing. You're covered in cuts, bruises, and even burns. The mother grabbed the nearby marshmallows, stuffing them into her mouth as she tried not to think about the calories she continued to stockpile. It's nice that you don't want them to get in trouble, but you have to tell a teacher about how rough they are. I did. You did? And what did they say? They say they're only playing. Stop provoking them. Just because you don't have a quirk to play with doesn't mean the others should stop. Distraught rose in her gut, the woman unable to take any more of the awful things she was hearing happening to her son. Now she really appreciated this trip out to the country, far away from the cities, because she couldn't even stomach to dropping him off at that school again. Maybe she should start homeschooling him. A distant rumbling made her look up, nothing but the crimson sky of the sunset illuminating the woods. It must have been the wind that. Boom. Something shot across the sky, splitting the clouds as it barreled over their heads. What was that? Izuku's question beat her to the thought, Inko instantly worrying about the child who was prone to rushing off to hero fights. It might have been a meteor. Whoa. His awe was adorable, helping to release the fear that was momentarily present. Bang! A ear-shattering noise slammed into them, the air throwing anything not tied down across the grass. Inko nearly fell down, quickly grabbing the stump she was sitting on to not be thrown away. Izuku, though, wasn't as lucky, being less than half her weight. He rolled between the trees, grass and dirt kicking against his small body as his limbs flailed to find a way to stop his momentum. All for one, a fiery voice bellowed overhead. I will end you. The voice was so familiar to Izuku, one he had listened to thousands of times, but never with such hostility. But there was just a hearty chuckle in response. Maybe in a couple of generations you would have enough strength to beat me, but your impatience to kill me has brought my brother back to me. A family reunion. Too bad your mentor isn't here to . Silence. A crack of the air leveled the forest in front of Izuku, his head shaking as it kept ringing with a high-pitched scream. Twigs stuck into his skin, and he couldn't even feel them over the force that slammed into him. Kid, hey kid. He could barely hear the random old man who was shaking him. He was dressed like a hero, but none he recognized, with the yellow cape and puffy banana gloves with boots. You gotta get out of here now. Kane pointing away from the scene, Izuku couldn't really tell what he needed to be doing, just nodding along, pretending to know what was happening as his body was starting to realize the damage it was suffering. Then in a puff the old hero was gone, bounding between trees. Glancing to where the man pointed earlier, he started to shift his feet towards that direction too. Crash. Thrown away yet again by the unseen force, he couldn't argue against it as he tried to figure out what was up and what was down. The answer finally came as his chest thumped itself against the cleared forest floor, his lungs throwing out everything inside of them. Gah! Adrenaline was keeping him awake and moving, Izuku's small hands grabbing onto the mulch under him to pull against the forces of gravity. The ground was more wet than he first thought, and the brown was looking a lot more dark. Rubbing his eye against his shoulder, Izuku tried to discover just what was happening. The forest was disappearing, the wind is using him like a rag doll, and there was something so familiar about it all. Yet there was so much dust he couldn't make out what any of it was. Such a stubborn quirk. No matter how far I dig in you, I can't seem to pry it out. Reaha. The ground left under Izuku's feet, Any particle within a mile radius was ejected from existence all around him. Even if his ears didn't work, he was able to feel the sudden crack that rang through his body when he rediscovered the planet. It wasn't his eyes that weren't working anymore, it was his brain. It had to be, because only in the far corners of imagination could he be seeing All Might, the muscled hero with the long blonde bangs, soaked in blood and kneeling before a suited body that was missing a head. All Might huffed, a glob of blood and a chunk of flesh fell from his mouth. Carefully, he reached for the man's arm that was still lodged in his gut. Teeth gritting to the point of being audible, he ripped it out of himself along with spilling his literal guts. All Might, rushing to help the hero, Izuku ignored the pool of blood under his torn shoes. Coming closer and closer to the scene, a limp in his leg grew worse. One of the mighty fists reached out to All Might's side, weakly grabbing the boy's outstretched arm. The blood rushing from his knuckles made contact with the cuts littering the noticeably smaller arm. Is he dead? The eyes of the child briefly turned to the man under the hero, but they were still the eyes of a child, and they could have never allowed him to acknowledge this. I don't KK no. Then, All Might coughed, hardly able to keep breathing. You need to finish him. The power held by numerous hosts found a new one, but its body was hardly able to hold everything it had. The will of heroes past, the fight that echoed across the centuries, the power that sought peace, the souls of those wishing for a future out of evil's grasp. It was so much that there was no way the weak youth could carry it all. So it adapted, instead of simply adding each and every strength, power, and compressed them into one single strand to fill the empty vessel. It had to let go of memories, of thoughts, of nearly everything that could keep their individuality. Finally, it had to go beyond the quirk gene. It had to embed itself into every fiber of his cells. The results wouldn't be instant, and there was no guarantee it would be able to move to the next host after this. So, it would turn this one into the best wielder of one for all there could ever be. Mom, Izuku continued to move his feet, no matter how much it hurt. He was scared, and not even sure what was happening anymore. The last he remembered was a campfire, and then it all hurt. Mom! Izuku! He could still hear her, but she was nowhere in sight. Following her voice, he made his way through the dark night with the towering trees peering down on him. Pushing past one of the branches, Izuku couldn't care about how it was a part of the dead tree that weighed thousands of pounds. It moved just as easily as a branch. Stepping out into the dirt road, Izuku turned his head around to try and relocate the voice of his mother. The night sky began to grow lighter, shadows hiding the stars becoming vibrant red clouds. Mom! Izuku! Once spotting her son out in the open, Inko rushed over to embrace her son. Oh, Izuku! I was so scared for you. I don't know what happened or where you were, but you're covered in blood. The frantic mother ran over her boy with her hands, trying to find where the grievous injury was. Not his arms, not his torso, not his legs. Nowhere on his burning skin could she find any wounds. Placing one last hand on his cheek, she finally felt what was wrong. He felt too warm, almost burning her hand. Past the road, the sun was finally peering over the horizon behind the boy. Even with the light illuminating his skin, all she could worry about was his well-being. Oh, you must have gotten sick out there all night. Come on, as soon as I find a signal we're going to get home and get you to bed. Okay, Mom. Inko latched onto his hand, the two walking with one another down the dirt road with the new day's sun to light their way. It wasn't a paved path, but a rocky road that the two had no choice but to move down. 6 years later. Watching, waiting, and preparing was all they had done for years, helping to maintain the peace that All Might established that had been threatened in recent months. His career had been slowly lessening over time, his work as a hero shortening every day until not even 15 minutes of the hero could appear in public. The villain attack of UA, a student and a teacher dead. Stain's string of murders and the Nomu attack at Hosa City, heroes and another UA student dead. The collapse of I Island. An attack at UA's training camp, even more dead and 2 kidnapping victims. Now, a rescue mission turned worse as the one they feared arose from hiding and confronted All Might directly in Kamino Ward. I think we should use him. A hero with brilliant red wings, Hawks, advised the board of directors for the Hero Public Safety Commission. He's passed every test so far, except the social ones. One spoke, but as the wall of screens showed the ever-shrinking form of the number one hero. We can't even give him battle tests anymore. Hawks pressed with a little more urgency. All we can guess is that he's at least as strong and as fast as All Might used to be. And what if All for One takes his quirk? Another man in a suit posed. From the early DNA samples we have of him before needles stopped working dash, a middle-aged woman in front of the others spoke up, unshaken by the buildings being blown apart. His quirk factor is unidentifiable, scattered throughout his genes to the point we can't even put it together without redefining what it means to be human. So Hawk stood in front of the screens. In other words, there's no definable quirk factor for the guy to take. Now, are we just going to let the system of peace collapse on live television, or put our own peace on the board while everyone is watching? Whispers and mutters were shared between them, but Hawks already knew what their answer would be. Getting out his phone, he sent a short text to his project he had worked hard on with the HPSC. Higo, get in costume. Punching bag, are we training? I thought we were done for the day. Higo, don't forget the cape. Higo, it'll be iconic. Punching bag, it's a rip-off. Higo, of a comic book character that nobody knows about anymore. Now get dressed, this isn't for fun. Here we are, yet again. The intimidating visage of All for One, wearing a midnight metal helmet over his head to hide his glee. He floated over the shriveled form of the number one hero. I would have thought you would have had more of your strength, but it appears you have passed on my brother long ago. All Might, as skinny and as scared as he was, still stood on his shaking legs. The scowl on the hero's face couldn't be any deeper. His life had gone downhill so much lately, from the losses of students, colleagues, fellow heroes, and even one of his closest friends. But he'll be damned if he's going to allow this monster to cause harm any longer. Pushing just a little more of the embers of One for All into his legs, he leapt up to get into the man's faceless form. He stayed in place, and All Might would take advantage of it with a decisive blow. Throwing out a fist to pummel the man's face in again, he fanned the lasting embers of One for All into his arm. It inflated, one final blow to eliminate the worst of the worst. A panicked man suddenly took All for One's place, fear written all over him with the angered All Might about to pummel him. He couldn't go through with it, not another life lost. All Might had to let go of the strength, of the power that was going to defeat All for One, or else another innocent person would be lost. Latching onto the man, they both fell as the exhausted hero rolled with the drop. Noble, All for One lowered himself from the air. Your final act as a hero wasn't trying to kill me, but saving someone else. Unlike all those who were before you. Allow me to make this small victory feel utterly defeating. The villain's arm grew into a grotesque mess of flesh and metal, muscles bulging to the point of being monstrous. All Might got back onto one knee, placing himself between All for One and a frightened citizen. I look forward to destroying your successor. With those last parting words, All for One dealt a killing blow that could destroy a city block. Boom. A mountain of rubble blew towards them, once and for all eliminating the symbol of peace from the world. Whoosh. With an array of sensory quirks, All for One discovered a new factor in his game. Someone had intervened, swiping away the cloud that covered the two would-be corpses. A young man with slicked back hair stood before the world, wearing an obsidian gray outfit with mint green cuffs, boots, and flowing cape. There was a white belt along his waist with more of the green lined within it. Finally, that same color was made into a symbol on his chest. A bright emerald S in a diamond, matching the piercing eyes on the lad. Nobody else has to get hurt tonight, the teen announced in a stern voice. You think you can protect them from me? All for One asked in an amused tone. I wasn't talking about them. As cute as the overconfidence of youth was, it was always satisfying to crush it. Using a geokinetic quirk and several other enhancers, All for One threw an underhanded punch towards the boy's side with the remains of surrounding buildings following his commands. Boom. The boy threw a punch decimating the attack with a powerful blow while keeping his gaze locked on the villain. A powerful strength quirk, it would make a marvelous addition to his. The villain was shocked to see the boy rise into the air, matching his own elevation. Good, he didn't like simple quirks. Maybe it was a telekinetic one? Barely reacting in time, All for One threw up every defensive quirk he could think of to stop the punch directed at him. It still forced him back, pushing him across the sky until he managed to catch himself 500 feet away. It cost him the integrity of his left arm. It was practically a useless piece of meat hanging by his side. Kicking in his regenerative quirks, he repaired the damage in an instant. He wasn't going to wait around goking. He was going to relieve this nuisance of his life. The bones under All for One's other arm shifted, creating a blade the size of a bus. 12 speed enhancers, 7 strength quirks, and 8 durability additions to this bone weaponry quirk. Using all at the same time, he intended to slice the child in half. Somehow, though, the boy moved faster when reacting to his attack. He floated to the side, catching the blade in his palm despite not needing to, and broke it away from the villain's body. He was caught off guard, again. This wasn't looking very good for his track record. Centuries, he was only surprised twice before this much. His brother's quirk and All Might's tenacity. Now this child was doing more than anyone has succeeded in doing to get in his way. Fine. Then he would restrain the boy and take his quirk by overwhelming it. A multitude of snakes erupted from All for One's back, too many to count, and all of them targeting the young hero. The boy's eyes glowed red, heat scorching from his gaze in 2 beams until it vaporized the serpents. All for One was surprised, normally a welcome change if it wasn't for the fact that it cut through 20 other quirks in the snakes. It only made his hunger for this unique quirk rise. Fire with fire then. The tips of the villain's fingers glowed orange, but he didn't aim the quirk at him. No, he aimed it towards where All Might was trying to help the civilian. Slamming it onto the ground, a wave of magma blew out of the ground and rose higher than 40 feet. The area was bathed in an angry orange light as it threw itself towards the defenseless. Whoosh! A gust of freezing wind blew out from the teen's narrowed mouth, halting the raging inferno and silencing its movement. This was becoming such a complicated mystery, but All for One now felt the hardened gaze of the caped teen. A snap of the air wasn't able to alert All for One in time, the fist meeting his gut with the shock absorption quirk unable to fully compensate for the punch. He passed through the clouds, the force clearing the dark night sky for the scene to be visible for all. All for One tried to track his movements, to fight against the rapid series of fists that kept slamming into his body to keep him in the air. Each one was getting stronger, faster, breaking him over and over. It now occurred to the villain that from the beginning the boy had been holding back at first, gauging how much strength to use. Maybe in his prime he could fight back, get the proper edge on this mystery. The strength, the speed, the durability, the flight, the heat vision, the freezing breath. It clicked as he was left to fall from the night sky, the moon highlighting his wounds that were doing their best to stitch him back together. He had seen all of these quirks before, each time they got stronger than the last. Now, the strength that reminded him similar to All Might's prime was rocketing down towards him. All for One had finally found where his brother had gone. Kaboom! The blur of green crashed his fists into his chest, dragging him down until burying him into a new crater in the mess of the ruins of the ward. Hovering above the body, the cape blew gently in the wind, the same symbol on his chest embroidered in his cape. Cameras who had been watching had long since left the shrunken form of All Might. Their pillar of peace had left the walking skeleton to drag himself away with someone draped along their shoulder. Instead, they looked to the one who defeated the evil, who conquered what All Might couldn't. That turned out better than we hoped. The president of the HPSC relaxed, running her fingers through her slicked-back blonde hair. Thousands died. A younger board member reminded them. This is the worst disaster to happen in Japan since the early Quirk Wars. The capture operation for the League failed, and the only thing that turned out right was rescuing the student. We didn't even do that. It was his own classmates. You're missing the opportunity here. With a press of a button, everyone looked on as every screen was enveloped by a different news station, each covering their greatest project. All for One is in Tartarus. All Might has entered a forced retirement, and now the next symbol of peace is under our direct command. All Might brought Japan into his own direction, but now we can bring it to a more defined path. He isn't a symbol of peace. Hawks tapped one of the replays of the footage. They're calling him a symbol of hope, since he came right as people were giving up and all that. Snap, that's good. A gentleman in a mustache pointed towards the screen. They'll get marketing to focus on that. Spread the word that he's the new symbol, one better than the last. He may be strong. Another woman in her 20s hummed. But he still can't handle interviews that well. Less is more. A wiser, older gentleman spoke. Too many heroes are spending more time putting on makeup than actually on the streets. If we want him to stand out, then we simply don't do any scheduled interviews, no TV hosts, no movies, no shows. Let the world believe in a pure symbol who doesn't spend time on any of that. Are you kidding? A sleazy younger man chuckled at the idea. That's where all the money is. We have plenty of money. The HPSC president announced with confidence. What we need is control, and if we can get the public to put all of their faith in this symbol of hope, then we will have it. What if he doesn't agree? The younger woman proposed. To Hawk's insistence, we haven't shown him just how far we've gone to gain such control. The kid has total faith in the hero system. Hawks interjected. If we want people to believe him, what better way than having him believe it himself? He can't lie if he doesn't know he's lying about the HPSC. Agreed. The president selected one of the images, enlarging it to cover all of the screens. The less he knows about what we do with him, the less chance there is we'll have a Lady Nagant incident. I think I speak for all of us that Midoriya is the last person we want to go against. The silence was her answer, the woman already making the necessary details to their plans to keep their status. There would be some road bumps along the way, making sure other branches of government didn't overstep their boundaries, and doing more sweeps to make sure no one would corrupt their new agent. Of course, now that Midoriya was revealed to the world, they would need to keep his image clean. He technically acted out illegally, but they can easily have heroes in the area vouch for giving him permission to act with his quirk. Well, they could push for the license exam for the hero schools to start early given recent developments. That was the best way to get Midoriya his own license, letting the next generation see firsthand who will be on top. Where is the child now? The younger suited man questioned, looking to Hawks for the answer. The hero went up to the keyboard, altering the screens to display captured video of the rescue operations for the survivors. Midoriya lifted a 5-story wall with one arm, tossing it to the side as he reached down with one arm to help pull a child out from a toy chest. Carrying the boy in his arms, he floated over to the medical station off to the side for those injured. After looking over the scene slowly, he waved to the kid before flying off. This is from 10 minutes ago. The president noticed. Where is he now? Hawks felt a vibration in his pocket. Quickly peeping at the cause, he smirked at the message. He's visiting his mom. We shouldn't keep her around long. The mustache man fiddled with his facial hair. She's could taint him, not to mention that house was expensive. It's pocket change compared to any of our paychecks. The youngest man reminded them, some seemingly more upset about that. His mother brings mental stability. Do we really want to take that away? Let him have his reward. The president decided. He did good today. In a far cabin away from civilization in Japan, Inko was inside staring at the television. Her son had come so far, struggled so much. From that incident when he was 9, he had become overwhelmed with his senses, everyday items breaking in his grasp. Experts said that mixed with PTSD and puberty hitting, he was overstimulated. Moving to the woods was the only option, even if it initially put her in massive debt. Anything to help her son and get him away from the abuse he suffered in school. One day, though, she woke up to Hawks knocking at her door with Izuku by his side. Supposedly, he found Izuku sleep floating, and then he offered to make her son a hero. She didn't like the idea of only seeing her son a few times a week, but the people at the HPSC had helped him so much, did more to raise him than she ever could. Now he saved Japan, and here she was just accepting money and sitting at home. Click. Turning towards the front door, Izuku used his key to enter the house, a grocery bag in his grasp. I brought some food. I stopped by a quick ramen place, and they were really nice. I wanted to pay, but they insisted that mom. The woman couldn't help but shed a tear, approaching her son who was now taller than herself, now an accomplished hero he always dreamed to be. I'm sorry, you just look so heroic right now. Izuku set the food down, accepting the inevitable hug that was coming his way. Inko sniffled, burying her head into his shoulder. I thought you would be covered in dust, the mother humorly remarked. It usually comes off when I hit the sound barrier, Izuku casually said, briefly scratching his head. The industrial-grade gel holding his hair down came undone in the small act, his curls coming back alive and making him 3 inches taller. When Inko took a closer look at him, she couldn't find any of his freckles, his skin free of blemishes. Are you wearing foundation? Yeah. I talked with some image advisors, and they said that with as strong as I am, my appearance should match that. My freckles and curls made me look too dash. Adorable. Inko brushed away the makeup, revealing the boy behind the costume. You're my adorable strong boy. Chapter 2. Children could see the world in a light that others couldn't. Imagining bright colors and a choir of noises to join in with the beauty over a simple item taken for granted. One child in particular years ago started to see and hear more than they ever wanted to hear. Watch a looking at / he's freaking out / it's likes possessed / I didn't know Thean swore to that / D Kai's being gasp as again. Every whisper, every muttered word around him was pounding in his ears. Anytime he turned towards a new one, no matter if they were in the room or not, was throwing their flesh into his eyes. He could see it all, every bone, every vein, with their hearts thundering in their chests as they screamed at him. Deku. One voice, louder and closer than the others, pelted his head as he snapped towards its direction, his fingers clenching into his desk. A child of spiky blonde hair that stood out in all directions with fierce crimson eyes scowled at him. Bakugo was always kind of intense, but right now, with the image of his skull surrounded in blood, made Izuku throw his hands over his eyes. It didn't help. He could still see them. This was a nightmare. It had to be. The world was never this scary. A hand touched his shoulder, and suddenly he couldn't think anymore. All his body wanted to do was escape. Jumping out of his seat and running past the teacher, Izuku tried to find somewhere to hide, somewhere to wake up from the bad dream that refused to let him be. An empty closet was all he could do, slamming the door behind him and curling in on himself. They kept talking about him. They kept yelling all around him. Everyone in the school, everyone across the street. The more and more he thought about it, the more he could make out, until the whole world was trying to drill into his head. Izuku. A worried, timid voice, softly spoken, broke through the storm, soothing the winds and the waves. It's okay, I'm right here. Slowly peeking over his knees and facing the door, his mind fought to see what he needed most right now. His mother was crouched in the hallway, looking towards him in worry. Just focus on me, please, it'll be okay. Nothing else sounded as good. Nothing else was as comforting as the first face he ever saw in the world. Everything else stopped existing. All he heard, all he saw was her with a loving embrace waiting for him. Shakily, he opened the closet door and stepped towards her, falling into her arms as he listened to her breathing, her heartbeat reminding him it was okay. As long as he had his mother, he would be okay. Opening his eyes to the ceiling with figures of heroes dangling above himself, Izuku took in a deep breath as he let the dream slip into the back of his mind. Sitting up in his bed in the dark of his bedroom, he began undoing the straps that kept him from drifting off in his sleep and drifted his legs out from his all-might covers. Gazing around the room, he felt peace as the thick lead walls covered in various posters and shelves of his passion. Behind them, layers of soundproofing kept him from being overwhelmed as he rested. That's why his alarm was always so blaring first thing in the morning, because besides himself, it was the only thing he could hear in his bedroom. Even if a dog couldn't pick up on its sound, it was enough to completely wake him up. Tapping the device, the lights in the room slowly started to increase, reminding Izuku of just how lucky he was that the Hero Public Safety Commission was so thoughtful to his needs. It was more than that. Several members on the board made it frequently known to shower him in gifts. Posters, figures, books, movies, Almost all of them signed by heroes in one way or another filled his spacious room. Stretching above himself, Izuku began to stand up as he moved towards his personal bathroom to begin getting ready for the day. He went to the door, opened in, and pressed a single button for the shower to release a single bucket's worth of water. By the time it hit the floor, he was already washed and cleaned. Wearing a single flexible blue shirt with hints of circuits running through the fabric, with matching pants that also served as boots, the boy braced himself as he opened up his door to the world. Immediately, he was assaulted by the noises of the offices, the various calls, the printers. So many sights and sounds of the main HPSC's tower were the first he processed until the whole world eventually made itself known to him. Even if he could hear all of that, he turned to the first person to walk down his hallway and gave them his full attention. "Good morning," Izuku greeted with a short wave and a smile. The custodian said nothing, just zoning out to the music filling their ears as they carted along their cleaning supplies. "Izuku," the distant voice of Hawks said aloud. "After your morning routine, meet me up in the nest." Was it Wednesday already? He sounded a little tired still, so Izuku made sure to pace himself so that when he arrived, Hawks would have had time to wake up. Maybe he could find a new brand of coffee for him? Schools were supposed to be a place where parents could entrust their youth to educators who were committed to creating a productive learning environment, one that would help the youth be prepared for the world they would eventually have to face without the veil. It was a simple concept, yet it was somehow infinitely more complicated. The principal of UA prided himself in finding solutions that the self-serving humans could never figure out. Unfortunately, in recent months, he too found himself fallen to the same level on those he saw beneath himself. "Here is my resignation." Lunch rush. One of the first heroes to be employed to UA handed the packet onto the hyper-intelligent mammal's oversized desk. Not bothering to put his white paw on it, he kept his translucent whispers under control. Of course, he knew that the hero had been planning his retirement for some time. Yet more and more, Nizu was doubting his own insights. "Thank you for all of your services." Nizu wasn't even sure if he should give a salute to the hero or not. Without another word, Lunch Rush left the room, letting the rodent see one of the heroes still under his employment. Luckily, he wasn't carrying any hint of papers. One hero replaced the other in his office, the excavation hero letting out a sagging sigh as he sat down in the comfortable seat in front of the principal. "I'll be lucky to have a class by the start of the fall semester." The excavation hero took off his helmet, putting it down on the floor beside himself like needed to be. "But be honest, will there even be a school once the summer is over?" "There will be," Nizu promised. Even if it was under a new name, there was a purpose behind his role. Even the heroics department? Teachers, heroes, children, many died, and even if he actively worked for their protection, it was still his responsibility. All from the heroics department. No wonder all the other departments gossiped over its closure. There are many who are calling for it to end, but now more than ever we need to prepare future heroes for the villains of today. Nizu pushed a button along the booster seat arm in his oversized classy principal's chair. It rotated, allowing him to slide out one of the drawers in his desk and obtain a rather hefty stack of paper notes. "I will have to use several favors, if they are still available, and use some rather backwater means, but the hero curriculum will continue this year." "It has to." "That's soon." The hero seemed surprised by the notion. Aren't the parents pulling out their kids left and right from the school? Most are aware of what their children were getting into in the first place, but have lost faith in our protection over them. Especially with All Might forced into retirement, we no longer have anything other than his word to assist. Yet still, some are understanding of our circumstances. I predict we will have 10 students left in heroics. Just 10, albeit more than Power Loader expected, but to think that countries competed to send their best children to their school to the point they had to narrow down their selected students from tens of thousands of candidates. Their conversation was interrupted by a phone call. The ringtone bare of any personality, but the name tag associated with it was something no one could ignore. HPSC. They had been fighting for legal control over UA for decades, and only because of its flawless track record could it stand on its own. They were trying again, and he couldn't blame them for picking the right moment to do so. Power Loader was patient as Nizu answered the phone, idle chatter as the news was given to the fur in a suit. The hero standing by saw the way the principal twitched, a tell he never understood until after the recent events. Something unexpected happened. Once the phone was back in its place, Nizu immediately hopped down from his personal throne and moved towards his tea sets. What was it about? The man questioned. The Hero Public Safety Commission has offered its credibility to supporting UA in helping to convince as many parents as possible to retain as many hero students as we can. They wouldn't do that without asking something in return. Power Loader mentioned, watching his boss work the leaves into the metal frame of the dispenser. But that's exactly what they did. Nizu said in a lower tone of voice, his eyes darkening as he could almost see the future behind the steam, just out of reach. So whatever it is they're doing for us, in managing to keep UA on its feet, somehow makes them believe it benefits themselves more than us. Can't we pretend it's just because they appreciate our contribution to the hero system? With a restrained laugh, Nizu began to try and formulate a logical reason as to what they could possibly be after. One common factor stood out from the rest, repeated in humanity since its beginnings. Humans, once they reach the top of the food chain, rarely let go of their crumbs. Crushing some of the stale bread in his hands, Izuku tossed them out towards a group of pigeons along the stone pathway. He was wearing a simple outfit, consisting of a denim jacket, flannel shirt, large jeans, and simple boots. His curls were prominent, his freckles out in the sunlight, and an obnoxious pair of glasses on his face. Next to him was Hawks in more civilian attire with a long coat to help cover his wings, and a white button-up shirt and slacks to give him a more business-casual appearance. Both of them stood there, feeding a bunch of birds without a care. Don't you think this is a little messed up? Hawks humorously nudged Izuku, before tossing another piece of bread ahead. What? Me, Hawks, feeding pigeons. Keeping up the smile, Hawks watched as Izuku attempted to wrap his head around the humor. Are you trying to imply you're fattening them up? What? You know, since Hawks would eat pigeons? The joke fell flat, Hawks giving up as he tossed the whole slice forward to have the rest of the birds swarm it. I can't tell if this was because of your split focus or your funny bone is severely underdeveloped. Izuku felt a little bit deflated after that. He kept trying hard to understand the man, but in the end he was just so different, so much cooler than he was. So, Hawks wiped his hands of the crumbs littering his palms. You see any cute girls? The hero laughed, seeing how hard Izuku flinched, the boy immediately looking straight down at his feet to avoid looking at anything that would resemble a female for the miles ahead of him. That's not fair, Izuku muttered until he got himself under control. How long are we going to be here? Hawks stopped the jokes, focusing instead on any potential issues. Is this too much? No, Izuku assured him. I'm fine. This is your first exposure test in a populated area. Hawks continued, adjusting the coat on his back as he felt his wings start to cramp up. Even then, it's a slow day. It's been a long time since I've been in a city. Taking a slow inhale, Izuku focused on the plant life of the park they were in instead of the fumes generated by the machines. I mean, I know I technically live in the HPSC tower in the middle of one of the most populated cities in Japan, but dash. I know. Hawks settled him down with a steady hand. We keep you away from the people for the most part, but still it must have been a shock when we threw you into the front lines like that in front of all those people. Izuku held the last piece he had in his fingers, an impatient bird flapping to his arm to start pecking at it from his grasp. It was surprising to hear what was happening, but when I heard that All Might was in trouble, I just moved. That was another thing the HPSC would want addressed right away. The kid acts before he thinks, before he gets proper authorization. Luckily, he had it before he was given his mission. This would need to be addressed before. Hawks glanced down, seeing Izuku's eyes locked on someone. Looking over, Hawks was surprised it wasn't some babe or even some distant person showering. No, instead it was a family. And once he saw one of the daughters, he immediately recognized which one. One of the students from UA Academy, Class 1A, Azuitsu. He was well briefed on each of the students, and if Izuku was already gaining special interest in them, well, that just worked out perfectly. But the fact that he was staring at her mangled shoulder with a scar running up her neck and over her face to her cloudy eye made him question whether or not he should allow this right now. What happened to her? He whispered, his all-seeing eyes seeing teeth marks against her collarbone, especially around where her right arm would be. The teenage girl limped over to a bench, taking a moment to rest as her siblings ran over to the playground. Her mother pulled out something for the girl, a water bottle, and from what Izuku read on the other capsule was a type of painkiller. She's a survivor from the USJ attack on UA. Hawks answered. After all, it wasn't exactly classified information. Must have been discharged from the hospital not too long ago. Izuku remembered his mother talking about that, how students got hurt. UA never released that much, and he was only focused on All Might's involvement. How could he be so ignorant of other people's suffering? How bad was it? Izuku asked, looking over to Hawks who was busy typing away at his cell phone. The teen made it a habit to try and not eavesdrop on what others were doing, but with super hearing and all that it was almost impossible. A student and a teacher died. Was it 13? How did you know? He knew the rescue hero worked at UA, but her activity was silent since then. All the media, it was only focused on All Might and how villains got into UA. None of them even cared about the death of a hero. Before Izuku knew it, he was pushed forward, the bird on his arm flying away as he looked up to Hawks. Go on, the hero encouraged him. I was just talking to the big wigs. Your next mission is to make some friends. Why you mean? I have to talk to Dash. A girl. Yes, now show me some hustle. Click. Many are questioning whether or not the intervention of this new hero was legal or Dash. Click. All Might was always going to retire, and should have years ago. Looking back, his activity was dropping Dash. Click. After his debut, no one has seen Superman Dash. Click. All Might is Dash. Click. Superman Dash. Click. Superman Dash. Art. Palms popped like firecrackers as a teenager nearly detonated the television remote in his tightening grip. Everything kept shoving that night back in his face. Those lousy excuses for villains gassed him, then thought he would bother to join their lousy club. Then before he could take them out, All Might got in the way. Then that disgusting goop took him to a nuke site. Then All Might had to. Dropping the remote to the carpet, Bakugo felt all the rage suddenly leave his body. All Might, the #1 hero, was nothing more than a sack of bones. Everything Bakugo tried to be, the best, the strongest, the undefeated #1, was suddenly no more. If he just killed that gas-masked freak, if he just took out those villains earlier instead of taunting them, if he just stopped yelling and fought them, All Might would still be around. Katsuki, a mother's voice, rather annoyingly yelled out from the living room. Get in here, we need to talk. Like she would listen to anything the old hag had to say. Despite his unwillingness, his feet still carried him out of his bedroom in a series of stomps. He barely paid mind to the fact that his mother wasn't already nagging him. Dumping himself into the couch, he began to throw his legs onto the coffee table, then grunted as his mother was surely about to start yelling over putting his feet down. Only she didn't. She didn't even look angry. She almost looked scared. Some part of him snapped to full alert, Bakugo putting his feet on the ground and sitting with his hands on his knees. What is it? His mother looked over towards his father, both of them starting to become very uncomfortable. Well, spit it out already, the teen demanded, his stomach feeling heavier when neither of them snapped at his words. Katsuki, his weakly spoken father, began with unusual assertiveness. We need to talk about your current enrollment in UA. No, the school wasn't giving up already, was it? After all he worked for to get in there. We know this won't come easy. His mother started, scared to even bring it up. We know how much it means for you to go to UA, but we don't think the school is the same as it was before. We'll still support your decision to become a hero, even after all you've been through. His father continued. What is it? Bakugo, with no insults and no demands, questioned. After long pause, the father of the house steeled himself as he prepared to deliver the news. It's time to start looking at other hero schools. No way. Bakugo immediately stood up, hands shaking as he saw his whole dream begin to crumble. I'm supposed to go to the #1 school and Dash. UA isn't safe anymore. His mother quickly argued. They're being targeted and dash. Good. Bakugo huffed. It'll give me another chance to kick those asses. They had it coming for too long. No. With the strongest will he's ever seen, Bakugo watched as his dad officially put his foot on the ground. You're not ready. The hell you mean I'm not ready? You are still a child. Bakugo never heard his father yell before, almost making him back down. You barely survived each of the attacks, and you better count yourself lucky they didn't try to kill you when they had you where they wanted you. If you're going to face those sorts of villains, you need a school that will keep you away from these people until you're ready to fight them. I am ready. No, you are not. Now you can either pick another school or have us pick one for you. Fuck you. Storming outside the house, Bakugo just ran. He cursed himself as his bare feet pounded against the pavement. Each step a reminder that he couldn't even stand up to his parents anymore. This wasn't fair. Why can't he be the strongest? Why can't he be the best? Why couldn't he save All Might when that caped bastard did it so easily? Swearing into the air, louder each time he felt his heels crash against the street. He needed to prove it. He needed to show them that he couldn't settle for anything less than the best. And when he looked up to some random trash graffiti some junkie probably plastered all over the side of a concrete building. That symbol, that damned green-eyed bastard. Even thinking about the way he looked pissed him off to no end. It brought out a familiar rage, one that made him feel smaller than he was, being looked down on like he was weak. Bakugo stepped towards the sloppy work, hands sparking with trails of smoke rising from his palms. Boom. In one blast, he turned it to a scorched mess. A spark danced in his mind as he realized the simplest solution to his issues. The answer might be easy, but how to make it happen was more difficult. He dreaded the thought on having to actively learn about this son of a bitch, but he needed to know more. Bakugo needed to know how to prove he was better than Super Dweeb. That asshat may act all high and mighty, but he was going to prove he was nothing more than a pathetic excuse for a hero. A lot had happened in her life, a lot sooner than she had predicted. All she was trying to do was learn how to help people. Then that opportunity was taken from her barely a week into the school year. Her life, her arm, half of her vision gone. At least, she still had her family. She watched them at the playground as she was left to sit nearby on the bench, the most she's moved since getting out from a hospital bed. Also, she might have a stalker. That same boy around her age had been passing by, stealing glances at her while clicking his pen furiously. He didn't seem dangerous, but he also didn't seem all too put together. Out of anything, he just seemed really nervous. It was almost amusing, and she could probably watch this go on for another hour or two, but in the end, she should probably say something before her overprotective father took notice. Do I know you from somewhere? Sue asked aloud, making the boy flinch as he clicked his pen even faster. You no. Wow, that was a hell of a stutter. Do you know me? She thought he might just fall apart from the mess he was quickly turning himself into, his thumb becoming a blur as he continuously clicked his pen until it snapped. He panicked, scrambling to the ground to pick up the pieces of it like it was his lifeline. Reaching down into the bag beside her, pushing aside some of the medication she had to keep nearby and various snacks, she found a spare pen and held it out to him. Here. He seemed confused for a moment as he held the remains of his personal pen. Cautiously, he came forward and accepted the offering. What's this FFF for? You look like you needed it, she simply stated. The boy stared off towards somewhere else for a second, seemingly losing focus until he returned to look at the pen. He clicked it a couple of times and waited before muttering to himself. If it works. I'm very straightforward, so forgive me if I come across as rude. The girl started, getting his shaky attention. But do you need a fidget? Huh. You know, to help solve some kind of mental tic? Oh. He flashed an annoyed glance somewhere before looking towards her, and then breaking his eye contact immediately as he shifted from side to side. Yep, definitely on the spectrum. My name's Azuitsu, but my friends call me Tsu. Aya, I am Imimidoriya izuku dash. Croak hey. He squeaked, Sue sighing internally as her large father was practically hopping over with his anger set on the boy doing his best not to crumble in on himself. What do you think you're doing near her? Her dad leapt over, his neck inflating as he did his best to intimidate the boy. Something inside him seemed to click, his shoulders straightening as he stood to his full height. That only made her father even more aggressive as he croaked loudly. "You trying to start a fight, Croak?" "No, but I can finish them." The sudden confidence in his unwavering voice threw Sue off, but she knew she had to stop this before it began. "He's my friend Karo," Sue interrupted, returning the boy to his easily startled self. "What? He just came to say hello. Don't be mean." She chastised her father, and with a single wave shooed him off before he could start anything more. All of this excitement was so much so fast, a pain growing too large to ignore in her chest. Once her father was far away enough, she finally let out the cough she was holding back. It started to get worse, her lungs aching but forced themselves to hack out whatever was bothering them, making it worse. Sue reached for the bag with her one good arm, trying to find the right medication, but her good eye was watering up from the pain. Was it the inhaler? Or was it a pill? Her mind was starting to lose the oxygen it needed, and she couldn't think right. A steady hand held her firm, while something came to her mouth and rejuvenated her lungs. Sue took slow, steady breaths, finding herself again as everything cleared up. Here, a glass of water was held out to her, Sue accepting it immediately to wash down the taste of blood in her mouth. "Thank you, Carol." Once her vision was fully cleared, she saw the boy was already holding out a gauze pad with some bandages. "One of your stitches came undone," he began to explain. "This should help." She blinked, staring at the offer, and then back up to unfamiliar person before her. That was until he made eye contact and fell apart again. "Thank you." She reached out to grab the bandages until she realized she encountered an issue. "I don't have enough arms." Is that a J joke? No, but now she wanted to laugh. Moving one hand to slightly pull down one of her shirt to peek under, she followed the line of stitches along her shoulder as it ran down her side until she saw the one that came loose. Using her hand to lift it from the bottom, she looked over and saw him rigidly sitting in place and looking away from her bare skin. "I'll need some help, Carol." "Okay." Health had been a battle for years now, but it was one that he saw no way to win. He ignored his diet, ignored the health advice from both his closest friends and his mentor. Now they were gone. There was hardly anyone left to support him. With only himself to depend on for his needs, he finally took it all seriously. If only he listened before he lost his strength. Setting the keys back in his pocket, the former #1 hero, now barely a walking skeleton in an oversized suit, entered the front door. "I'm home." Toshinori Yagi, once known as All Might, hobbled inside while supporting himself with a cane. "Welcome back, Uncle Might." A teenager, about as old as his students, was sitting on the couch in her pajamas typing away on her personal laptop. Her round glasses hung loosely at the tip of her nose, and her blonde hair tied up into a ponytail. She got up to greet him, wordlessly offering to help take his coat off. "You can stop calling me that." He relented, letting her help to hang up the jacket. "You'll always be All Might to me," Melissa answered, moving to the kitchen to bring out what was supposed to be dinner from the fridge. "How were things today?" "Bad." It's been bad for a while, but it was momentarily halted. Press conference after press conference, he had been doing his best to apologize for his failures until it was too much. His body gave out before he could make it right. Melissa was someone he too failed, letting her father and the technological wonder that was Island sink to the bottom of the ocean. "It's difficult to convince my accountants to give up so much money to the relief efforts and charity, but it's probably the only good thing Might Tower can do at the moment. There's a lot to rebuild." Melissa agreed, putting the leftovers in the microwave. "But I believe you can do it." He wasn't, though. He could only put his faith and support in others that could. Part of the reason why he nearly begged Nizu to let him continue working at UA as a teacher. "Also," the girl began as she sat down at the table, "have you learned anything else about him?" "Him? You know?" With a heavy sigh that weighed him down, All Might sat down across from her and rested his cane on his chair. "All for One is in Tartarus, and still refuses to talk about Shigaraki." "Not him," Melissa corrected with a little more energy. "I meant the other guy." "The other guy?" Why couldn't she just say whoever's name she was mentioning? Knock knock. Both looked to the door, and then to one another for an answer on who it could be. All Might never had visitors, and anyone who would normally visit Melissa was. I'll get it. Moving to stand up, Toshinori nearly fell back down as he forgot he was supposed to use his cane. Snatching it and letting out a curse from his lips, he moved towards the door and looked out the peephole. Oh, that's who it was. Feeling ashamed and awkward at the same time, Toshinori grabbed the handle and opened his home to someone he wasn't surprised arrived at his doorstep looking rather serious. The rather tall and slim man wearing a crisp white suit and streaks of yellow in his seaweed hair, Sir Nightai wordlessly entered once Toshinori stepped to the side. The man stopped seeing Melissa, adjusting his glasses as he recalled that particular piece of information. I still don't see why you adopted her. With a quirk like yours, you seem to do that a lot. The active hero nearly cracked a smile at that, but had more important business he needed to address. Could I talk to you privately? Toshinori wasn't entirely surprised to see Night-Eye had decided to talk in person. The only real communication between them was over who his next successor would be. Night-Eye found a promising young man with a quirk honed to be one of the strongest. He had noticed his rapid decline before anyone else. Toshinori would give him that, and his proactive work towards finding the next holder. Perhaps he was selfish wanting to finish all for one himself. Melissa, the exhausted man called out to the girl in his care. Would you go to your room for a bit? I promise this won't take long. Complying with his wishes in silence, Melissa made her way to her bedroom and closed the door behind herself, leaving the men in peace. Once they had their privacy, Toshinori wasted no more time. Does this concern young Togata? It does. Night-Eye quickly affirmed as he took a quick glance about the man's living situation. It was incredibly plain, with just basic furniture with some still bearing a price tag. Toshinori still hasn't gotten his belongings moved from his previous home. I want you to meet him in person. The League of Villain has only grown more, and besides, All for One has escaped. The world needs its pillar, and I believe Togata can quickly get a hold of One for All. With a slight groan as he sat down, Toshinori began to feel the years catching up with him. Maybe you're right. I just thought I would find a successor and just feel something spark in One for All, confirming my choice. But now, ever since I used the last of what I could handle of One for All, I haven't been able to feel its presence. Night-Eye felt puzzled by the revelation, sitting down in a chair nearby to try and further understand. That doesn't sound right. When we first discussed the needs of a holder, they had to have a body prepared to hold it to not be overwhelmed with its power. Even if your health has declined, you should still feel its overwhelming strength. His jaw hung in the air, the forcefully retired hero soon realizing a major flaw in his conclusion. That's right. So why can't you feel it anymore? I'm not sure. He dumbly answered as his mind ran through dozens of questions with no sure answers. Toshinori was given One for All. He had been able to use its power from day one and only bonded stronger with the quirk. The only time that changed was his first fight with All for One when he received his injuries. All for One couldn't take One for All, and if he did, he would have used it immediately to seize open power over the world. He admitted himself he didn't have it. So Toshinori had to still have it. He never gave it to anyone else, and no one took it from him. They would know, no one could hide that much power. In his palm, Izuku held the remains of the specialized pen. This was their first time using it, and he broke it in under a minute. Now back in the safety of the HPSC tower, he held it forward to Hawks. Sorry I broke it. I'm surprised you don't break things more often. With a casual smile, the hero accepted the remains. Guess I'll have a talk with R&D about this. Perhaps we can get some quirk tech like we have in your hero's suit. Also, don't click the next one as fast. I know how nervous you get around people, especially girls, but the app was displaying your messages faster than I can read. Sorry. Izuku sheepishly apologized, only for the adult to ruffle his hair in understanding. Start getting used to it. We need to have you able to speak to kids around your age before the end of summer. The teen perked up, getting over his self-disappointment to focus on a job. What's happening then? Placing a finger over his mouth, Hawks found it fun to tease the boy. It's a surprise, but there will be lots of girls in tights. Izuku stiffened up in the hallway, Hawks sending out a couple red feathers from his wings to keep him moving along. So, did you actually become her friend? I don't think we're TT that close yet. Even thinking about it made him stutter. BB, but she said I could CC come along TT to visit some of her other F friends from UA. Great. Hawks congratulated his efforts with a hearty slap on Izuku's back, doing more harm to himself than the boy. Looks like you're on top of your mission. Is that really my mission? Finding himself in front of his bedroom, Izuku placed his hand beside the 5-foot-thick door to begin the unlocking sequence. Making friends? I'm not judging, but it's a lot different than my first one. Your first one was an emergency, but it worked in everyone's favor. Now, we have to get you prepped for frequent public appearances. We can't always depend on a strong opponent snapping you to attention. With a nod of acceptance, Izuku trusted his mentor's advice. He was always right, always guiding him towards what's best. He would trust him, trust the HPSC to know what to do. With heavy magnets unlocking the door and sliding it over to the side, Izuku stepped into his room. Have a good night. You too, sport. Get some rest even if you don't feel like sleeping. You do good, and I'll supervise you on some more flying exercises. That put a smile on the boy's face. Izuku standing a little straighter in excitement over the potential reward. I won't let you down. Copying his enthusiasm, Hawks gave a strong thumbs up as the door began closing between them. Once shut, closing his senses from the rest of the world, he dropped his smile and took out his phone. Hey, I'm going to need more time off. Of course it's because of him. The kid looked like he was about to piss himself just for being near the Azui girl. I told you keeping him isolated from the world for so long would only make it harder for. Yes, of course. But then who will watch him while I'm? So he'll have to trust a stranger? It doesn't matter if they're also a hero, I don't think. Understood. Ending the call, Hawks was always shocked by how ignorant the higher-ups could be. They always yelled at him if he wasn't detailed enough in his reports, but with how they respond, it's like they don't even read them. They need to wake up and realize they can't just half-ass orders over raising the boy, especially if that kid decides he doesn't like what they're doing. After all, they still haven't figured out how to stop him if he went rogue. Chapter 3. He was trapped, stuck in a coffin of thick metals that eliminated his senses. The only thing he could hear was the pounding of his heart in his chest, echoing in the dark. A single red light blinked above, and he pushed out. Crash. He ripped his surroundings apart instantly, the metal bending to his will as Izuku pushed the walls out until he could identify what was around him. Draped in his costume, his hair slicked back and his freckles nowhere to be seen, he was practically a different person. 23 armed soldiers, 40 hostages, all of them scattered throughout several locations inside the building he was placed in front of. He already saw fingers squeezing triggers and wasn't given any time to plan. He would just have to make time as he acted. Becoming a blur, Izuku didn't bother for doors as he crashed through a wall with no one nearby to suffer the rubble. Moving towards the first bullet exiting the barrel, he placed his finger inside and gently shoved the stock of the gun into the man's chest. Rinse and repeat, disabling every weapon while landing a blow against the enemy. When the immediate threat was taken care of, he rushed back around, gathering all the assailants and placing them in a single pile. With one last sweep of his vision, he confirmed there was no unusual activity and hovered in the center of the room. It's all right now, he said in a voice of practiced confidence. I am here. The buzzers went off, Izuku hovering down to the ground to stand next to the many crashed dummy androids dressed in only cheap outfits. Soon a couple of people, real people, entered in mechanic jumpsuits and tablets. They ignored him, going over to begin downloading the data from the crashed dummies. Well done. A young man in a business suit with wavy dark hair entered, giving a short applause at the quick performance. I think we can say numbers won't matter against you. A second person in a flashier purple business attire with vibrant fluid red hair seemed to disagree. But we'll have to mark it as a failure. You used All Might's catchphrase. Sorry. Izuku was only left to apologize. I haven't found my own catchphrase yet. You don't even need one. The other man quickly defended the boy. You just showing up is a catchphrase. Rolling her eyes, the woman leaned down and gripped Izuku's chin, the boy freezing up as she turned him from side to side. We need some more contouring to bring out his cheekbones. If he's going to be an image of unbeatable strength, we need to cover up that baby face. He's still a kid. The hero industry likes them young to have an air of innocence, so long as they look tough. All the muscles in the world won't change someone's view of a boy playing dress-up. All Izuku could do was stand there quietly as the adults continued to argue about who he should be, what he should look like, what he should do, all to be someone the people could look up to. This wasn't anything new. He was aware for years he had to become the strongest, the best hero he could be. The HPSC was helping him to do that. Just sometimes, it felt like what they had in mind was so far away that he couldn't reach it. All he wanted to be was someone who could help, even if he had a baby face doing it. Hawks kept walking beside the boy, watching in amusement as he seemed to accidentally speed up suddenly before stopping himself once he noticed he was leaving the man behind. This was the second time out, and this time Izuku got to pick their destination. From a list of pre-approved locations, but still he got to pick. I've only ever seen it from a distance. Izuku spoke up, the fake glasses nearly falling off his face before he readjusted them. They have 10 floors, each with different generations of hero figures, and at least 5 guaranteed figures for every ranked hero. They even have one of the largest public archives of heroic history and are constantly uncovering heroes that were integral for Dash. I get it. Calming the child down, he readied him for the next blow. You're going to have a lot of fun making fellow nerd friends in there. I've got to head back to Dash. Immediately, Izuku struck his heel into the ground to stop himself, facing Hawks with a sudden fear. Kigo, why you're not going to supervise me? Nope. It's all on you now. Making a high-pitched squeak, Izuku stared dumbly as the man who had been helping him for years just took 10 steps away, threw off his coat to extend his wings, and took off into the sky. He could follow. Just go up there right now and into the sky to stay beside the one common factor in his life kept from the world. It's not like this was a life or death mission or a critical extraction, even a reconnaissance mission. All he had to do was go somewhere he liked and try to make some friends. Taking in a steady breath and making sure to release it warm and slow, he reasoned it was just a shopping trip. Right, just walking through a store. No reason to freak out. Reflecting back on times when his mother would accompany him in the toy aisle of a store, Izuku was able to rely on the memory for comfort as he went through. He soon found himself absorbed in the vast array of merchandise. So many heroes, and even some he wasn't even aware of. Looking over box after box, reading the basic descriptions of every person the figures were based off of, Izuku began losing track of time. He even lost so much focus around himself that he didn't notice the people right behind him. Ahem. It caught him off guard, his mind nearly slipping its control on its fight or flight reflexes. He could fly, but he had been training for years on how to fight. Whoa there! A young man with an exclamation mark for a head raised his hands in surrender. Sorry to scare you. Sorry. Izuku lowered his fist. I really didn't mean to dash. It's okay. The two-dimensional boy calmed him down. I get it. Nerds tend to have bad experiences growing up. Memories of explosions came to mind, Izuku quickly shaking it out. Why yeah? Is this your first time here? Why yes, actually. I've always wanted to come be, but I never really had time. That was a good way to put it. He had to spend all his time learning how to not break things around himself and not be overwhelmed by his advanced senses. Well, then we've got to make sure your first time is one you'll never forget. Wrapping his arm around Izuku's shoulder, he began to take the boy on a personal tour. I'm Manga Fukudashi, but just call me Manga. It's easier given my face. Forgive me for asking, but what exactly is why your quirk? I've never seen a two-dimensional one before. I'm glad you asked. Manga, taking them towards one of the more recent generations, began to tell him everything. I basically have the power to manifest onomatopoeia. I yell a word, put my quirk behind it, and it physically manifests as a matching definition. It helps reading up on comics and other material that uses it. A lot of that stuff helps solidify what each word actually means. That's incredible. Izuku gawked over the versatility and the potential of how strong that could be. Erecting structures, creating storms, there were so many possibilities. What about you? What's your quirk? Well, that's pretty complicated even if he did stick with the truth. So, he'd stick with the answer prepared beforehand. It's a sensitive topic for me. Sorry for bringing it up, but I just love learning about other people's quirks. It was hard to tell what manga was thinking about, given that he lacked a face and all that. But wordlessly, the boy patted Izuku's shoulders a couple of times before moving on. Come on, I got a gift card in the mail, and I don't plan on having any spare change. I didn't know this place had gift cards. Neither did I, and I didn't have to do some sketchy online survey or anything. It just showed up. Odd. Moving through walls, floors, and just about anything, one young hero was very experienced in getting from one place to another. Nothing was an obstacle. Well, so long as he could keep his pants on. Literally. With a costume designed to do just that, the love child of Tintin and the Vault Boy ascended up the familiar building. Mirio Togata, aka Lemillion, moved up the agency that he had worked at for over a year. Sir had requested his presence concerning something important, but hopefully it wasn't serious enough to where he couldn't crack a joke. Peeping his head out of the floor, Mirio smiled up to Sir sitting patiently at his desk. Taking a quick glance to his right and spotting his shadow, Mirio had one thing to say. Looks like it'll be another 6 weeks. His joke must not have been as clever as he thought, or just outright bad, because Sir didn't even flinch. Pushing himself up to stand on his feet, Mirio began to feel very awkward by the lack of response. Is there something wrong, sir? Not at all. Someone answered behind him, a tired voice that sounded strained just to speak. Giving the mystery guess his attention, Mirio saw the living skeleton sitting behind him with his hands resting on his cane. His long, shaggy blonde hair seemed familiar, something that was similar to the hordes of All Might merchandise all around him. Wait a second. I didn't realize we had a guest of honor with us. He also wasn't aware that All Might was still in contact with his old sidekick. The subject always seemed touchy. It's my honor. The retired #1 hero strained as he stood up to address the boy. I've looked into your work recently. Between your accomplishments in the sports festival and the cases you've worked with Sir Nightai, incredible. Fighting the urge to give a salute, Mirio accepted the words. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I believe you have lots of potential. All Might assured Mirio. In fact, I think you can be the next #1 hero. That's wow. Mirio felt his stomach dance. The boy had always been humbled by his quirk. It took a great amount of training and years of embarrassment to get a handle on it. Normally, he'd be able to shrug off compliments. But to hear that his efforts impressed the man who single-handedly brought an age of peace? Well, he could die happy. So that's what I'm offering now. Standing to his full height and forcing his spine out of the hunch it was locked in, All Might extended a single hand towards the teen. Mirio Togata, do you wish to be the next #1 hero? Never mind. Apparently, he had even better things to live for. This was honestly really fun. Izuku quickly found himself relaxing around manga. The boy had a natural enthusiasm and encouraged any geeking out, which was exactly what Izuku found himself doing every time they turned the corner. I can't believe it. Pressing his face against the anti-theft glass, Izuku gazed inside towards the Endeavor figure sitting in its box. Several warning labels plastered on the cardboard. I thought Japan banned this line. No kidding. Manga was quick to agree. Who had the bright idea to have some guy with an objecting-enhancing quirk make figures that light themselves on fire? It was a good point, even more so that its price was so high that the only people that would think about buying it are collectors who don't even take them out of the box. Shall we move on to the final floor? Manga offered as he pointed to the escalators. The path up to the top was plastered in newspaper articles, magazines, and historic photographs of none other than the most famous hero, All Might. Following manga, Izuku took his time in reverence, reading every word and looking over all the mannequins wearing the various costumes All Might wore. His excitement bubbled inside himself to the point he felt the air lift under his feet. Wait, crap. Quickly planting himself back on the steps before anyone noticed, Izuku prepared his soul to enter a temple. Okay, maybe it wasn't exactly like that, but it's the closest he had to a religion. The mechanisms under their feet carry them the last few steps. Izuku realizing he should have brought a camera to record an entire floor being emptied. A few employees, both from the store and the moving company, were packing away the various toys, merchandise, and even pieces of history were being boxed up and carted away. What the crap? Manga took a couple steps forward, pausing at the cheap barrier placed in front of them. Did All Might get canceled? All Might's retired. A 50-year-old in a jumpsuit grumbly announced, stuck in his minimum wage as he dumped the figures off the shelf and into the next box without a care. So are more than half of the heroes this place represents. Manga argued back. You can't just erase him from history. This isn't a museum. The man growled back. It's a toy store. If you really cared about this store, then you wouldn't call them toys. I don't care. Whine to somebody that does. With a loud huff, Manga angrily paced back and forth as he couldn't do anything to stop this all. Izuku was more shocked than anything. It hadn't been that long since All Might's forced retirement, but they were just giving up on him? For what? Excuse me. He called out to one of the store employees with a clipboard. What's going to happen to all the stuff here? It's being sold off to other third-party companies to handle sales. Apparently, word is spreading through the manufacturers that they've got a bigger lineup that is going to sell twice as much as All Might ever did. Who was more popular than All Might? Izuku couldn't think of a single hero that made more of a contribution to society, or that was as well loved by the people. The man saw just how upset Izuku seemed, apparently having similar thoughts on the whole thing himself. Taking a quick look around the place, he spotted a particular box in the back. Double-checking it with the shipping IDs, he went over and grabbed one of the smaller boxes inside. Here, he held it out to Izuku. This was going to storage, but it should still work when you go to check out. Izuku looked towards the gift, his eyes seeing the simple round coin-like keychain with multiple interchangeable cases reflecting each era of All Might's career. His eyes widened as he recognized the product. One of the few holographic toys to ever exist that had a speech AI designed to let you have your very own All Might to talk with. That exists. Manga noticed the hollow keychain. I thought it was just rumors. They were supposed to be officially released not long after All Might started working at UA. The man shared, but it got delayed after that attack on the school. It kept getting delayed until the company making them bailed. While it had a tragic start, Izuku was nevertheless grateful for this chance. Bowing deeply in respect for the man's kindness, Izuku then glanced at the price tag. He hadn't bought anything, yet not wanting to overspend on the money he was allotted by the HPSC. But this was incredibly pricey, more than anything he ever bought before. Actually, Manga hadn't grabbed anything yet. Are you planning on buying anything? If my mother taught me anything, it was to shop wisely. First you browse the whole selection, then you narrow down what you want with your budget. Proceeding back the escalators, Izuku gave one last glance over towards the hero he looked up to, idolized for so long, being treated as outdated product. He held onto the one piece he could salvage, needing to know if he could keep it with him outside the store. Reaching into his pocket and listening closely out of thousands of voices, he began clicking. Across the city, he heard the same code coming out in small beeps, and then he heard Hawk's reply out loud miles away. What are you trying to do by the store? It's just one thing. How much can it be? Kid, you could have added to more zeros to that, and it still would have been approved. Hesitantly, but they still would approve. I mean, how much do you normally spend with the card? Never. We have vending machines, 10 different stores inside headquarters, and you even have access to online shopping. Whatever. Now how about you put that money to good use and go shopping, make more friends? Do you not like making friends? Why don't we continue this after your mission? You found a friend, right? That's right. Actually paying attention to Manga, the boy was struggling to carry the boxes in his grasp to keep them from toppling over. Ugh, this place really needs shopping carts. Here. Izuku held out his hands. Let me help. Oh, thanks, man. Izuku easily accepted half of the stockpile, following Manga as they went through the checkout line. You sure you're only getting that? The two-dimensional boy questioned. I mean, this is your first time, right? Yes. Izuku smiled as he helped carry the items out of the story with Manga beside him. It's more than enough for me. If you say so. Oh, looks like my friend is done too. Who? The street was decently busy, with people moving back and forth going about their own business. One stood out, someone in white shirt with a design on it resembling some kind of sci-fi plug suit. On her head was a purple hat, also part of some kind of merchandise with green eyes on the front. There was also something manga forgot to mention. That friend was a girl. Hey Yui. Manga would have greeted with a wave if he had hands to spare. Did you find what you were looking for? The flat-faced girl with sky blue in her eyes nodded without emotion, holding up her shopping bag. She loves anything mecha. Manga explained over to Izuku. I know, super outdated. She slightly looked over to Izuku, then back to Manga without a word. Oh, this is Midoriya. I met him in the store today. He's cool. CCC cool. Midoriya, this is Yui Kodai. You can call her either one. She doesn't mind. Yui silently nodded, agreeing with the boy as Izuku restrained from his heart, freaking out too much. While she looked like a girl, the fact that she was quiet and had very little presence helped not tingle his nerves. So, how did you two meet? We go to UA together. Manga simply explained as he started to lead them the group. We're in the same class in heroics. UA, the hero department. Izuku wanted to ask thousands of questions, wanting to know what the dream school was like and how it would be like to learn under All Might himself. Then he remembered what UA had faced, how many lives it had lost, and what attacks had targeted the children themselves. Should he apologize, praise them for their courage, or pretend like he didn't know? Manga easily read the conflict dancing across Izuku's face and found another option Izuku hadn't considered. Change the subject. Hey Yui, you mind easing the burden? He held up his stack, then motioned his head towards the boxes in Izuku's arms. Yui quickly checked their surroundings to make sure no one of authority would yell at them. With one hand she tapped the boxes, all of them shrinking to the size of thumb drives that Manga collected and stashed carefully in a clear plastic card game box. Awesome. Now how about we head back to my place, and I can show you my collection while Yui spends the rest of the day sanding down a bunch of plastic pieces. Was he inviting him over? Or do you have something you have to do? Izuku almost yelled not at all. It had been so long since he remembered going to a friend's house, if they even were his friend. That's when he heard it, something that was ingrained into him to listen for, something trained to be a competent hero. A scream. Manga put away his collection of goodies into his bag, tightening the straps and readying himself for the trip back home with potentially a new friend. My folks probably don't mind if you stay late into the night. Yui's been bugging me to watch another Gundam show, but I need someone else present to balance out my bias against Midoriya. The boy was gone, Manga looking around to try and see if Midoriya got caught in the crowd. Yui, did you see where he went off to? Taking another look around, Yui shook her head in defeat over his sudden disappearance. Where did he go off to? Deep within the HPSC, where costumes were made for so many heroes, one section of fashion and development had a section designed to make outfits that could withstand the harshest conditions. Various versions of the same green and gray outfits were being looked over, with a shimmer and polish applied to every last one of them. We have 7 at the ready. A plain woman reported to one of the top members of the HPSC, the one with her fluid red hair looking over each one with a critical eye. In case the boy should ever rip one of them. We have 6 more to spare and dash. I count 5. She said in a low voice of warning, her underling looking back in horror in case she miscounted or one of the very expensive costumes was misplaced. It was there just a second ago, I swear. Turning on her heel, the boss over everything over fashion and appearance stopped wasting her time here. You have 1 hour to find it. Bowing in shame as the woman left, she immediately went over towards the mannequin that should have displayed the outfit. Scrambling around to see if it was laying nearby, her eyes caught something out of place. A sticky note, placed where the outfit was. Had to borrow this really fast. Oh no. Work for cleaning up the mess of Kamino, more known to the world as the Kamino disaster. Crews from all over Japan were assisting in cleaning up the area after the destruction, trying to rebuild what they could. They had a tight deadline and double the work, so much that the lower down the chain of command between the construction workers, the more they felt cutting corners was a good idea. That's until something goes wrong. Get it steady. One man in charge of his own failing business had attempted to jump on the opportunity to finally get some financial stability. Unfortunately, since he had less money to pay his employees than other contractors, he ended up with some of the cheapest crews one could get. They didn't bother following safety regulations, again, and it was about to cost him everything. The massive crane carrying some of the wreckage barely touched the skeleton of a new building, and with a cracked foundation that should have been remade instead of recycled caused a chain of events with every half-tightened bolt and sloppy welding job snapping loose. People in safety harnesses all over the start of a building were hanging on for their lives as the beams under their feet quivered and groaned. Mr. Uraraka, one of the yellow hats, yelled over to the man in charge of the project. "We need to evacuate now. We can't just leave them." Mr. Uraraka yelled back. "Call the heroes." "Too late. It's coming down." "Dad." Mr. Uraraka's own daughter ran over to him. She was a hero student, but they had to pull her out given the danger the school had. They didn't have the money to put her anywhere else, already investing too much into her shot at UA. So, regrettably, they let her help in their work despite her age. "Get out of here, Achiko," he yelled to her, but the girl was stubborn in helping and instead kept rushing over to him. Wait, why was she running to him? The answer came in a shadow, the man looking up to seeing that in a hurry an improperly secured amount of rubble dangling from the crane was about to snap. Right on top of him. Oof! His daughter shoved him with her hands as she fell onto her belly, the weight of his body vanishing as he was sent spinning away from the danger. That left his daughter right in the spot he just was. "Achiko!" he screamed as he fought to gain control of his trajectory, to try and go back for her. It was too late. He was going to lose his family and his business. Achiko barely had time to look up, a massive weight hurtling towards her. Her dream was to be a hero, but she was willing to give up that dream to support her family. They instead pushed her to go after what she dreamed of, and she got there only to lose it. Achiko was okay no longer being a hero to help her family, but it looks like she managed to do both. There was no time to roll over and reach up, hoping her quirk would act before she was crushed. A horrible thought crossed her mind, that many had already died in this very spot, and she would just become another number. Crack. The noise came right above her, Achiko closing her eyes as she thought that was the sound of her bones snapping under the slab of concrete and rebar. But she was still breathing, she could still feel. Slowly opening one eye, she saw her father looking above her. The shock of not being dead was already muting any of her thoughts, and when she turned over, that's when she saw him. The emerald S shimmered in the rays of the sun, the cape fluttering behind him as he stood on air and held the massive weight with one hand above his head. "Are you all right?" his firm voice asked with a softness behind it. Achiko numbly nodding her head up and down as she didn't blink to miss any detail. Moving with surety and carefulness, he slowly hovered down to place the wreckage beside her before looking over to the array of scaffolding and skeleton work of the building. "Excuse me." Turning into a blur and leaving a short cloud of dust from where he just was, he blew a cold wind around the base of the structure with thick ice quickly forming to give a temporary foundation. Circling around the whole area, precise heat shot out from his eyes as he welded the sloppy work done before while grabbing the cables attached to the harnesses of the employees. Once he reached the top, he descended from above to place her father's workers onto the ground and returned his attention to the building. Much faster than before, he went to every area, tightening the bolts with his bare hands until a job that would take weeks was accomplished in seconds. Achiko was so focused on him, her eyes searching back every time he disappeared and reappeared somewhere else until finally he was above it all and looking over his handiwork. Gliding back down until his feet touched the earth in front of her, he extended a hand to her. Silent and entranced by his countenance, Achiko tenderly placed herself in his care as he lifted her up with the slightest effort. His gaze landed on her father, not one of judgment or condemnation, but of care and concern. "You should probably make sure everything is up to code." Yeah," he dumbly agreed, the hero nodding in acceptance as he started to fly away. Achiko only tightened her grip on his hand. She loved heroes growing up, but so far every time something had happened in front of her, heroes got hurt, killed, and her friends too. He was different. He saved everyone, and it didn't even cost him a single sweat on his brow. just like how she imagined All Might to be before seeing him in action. This was a fairy tale come to life. Wait. She didn't want to let him go, afraid of the dream ending and forcing her to wake up to the reality of her experience. Who are you? He looked right at her, those shining green eyes that sparked hope into her heart. I'm Superman. Chapter 4. The wind flowed around his body in rapid waves, clouds flooding into his vision, and the rushing trees under him were growing closer and closer. Up, kid, up. A 19-year-old Hawks, barely a year of experience as a fully privileged hero, yelled to the 12-year-old boy, who was wearing a tight black uniform with several sensors and wires connected to him. His arms were flailing, Izuku tumbling around in the air as he panicked until his body regained its sense of gravity. He promptly fell into the forest below, becoming a living meteor that plowed through branches and trunks all the same until crashing to a stop in a crater of twigs and mud. With a single beat of his red wings, Hawks landed before the boy who was trying to pick many leaves out of his messed up hair. You gave up again. I am sorry, I'll try again. You keep saying that. The young man let out an annoyed huff as Izuku went back into a crouch. For the past 3 hours, for the past year, we've been trying to get you to sustain your flying, but you still barely managed to float. Hell, it bugged him so much. Hawks just saw potential in the kid and knew the HPSC was looking for more after his success upon having his agency launch as soon as he became an official hero. But his career had only started, and he was already spending almost half of his time helping to raise a super brat that was terrified of himself. He could see how heavy his words were to the kid, his shoulders sagging as he wiped his nose. I'm sorry, Izuku whimpered. Great, now he was the bad guy. Hawks sent out a couple of feathers to shave off the splinters on a nearby trunk, smoothing it out to sit on. Kid, just tell me what's up. Why don't you want to fly? I do. Izuku quickly shook his head in denial. I really want to fly? I dreamed of having a quirk that let me fly. Let me be strong, fast, just like Dash. Yeah, like All Might. Hawks waved off the boy's constant praise towards the #1 hero. The man may technically be the best of the best, but he can't fly. As Hawks has supervised Izuku's progress, there was something in common with his abilities. Anytime he tapped into them, it was always starting big, letting him loose, and then teaching how to hold himself back once he got a good grasp on it. His senses were taking in everything, so he learned how to focus. He was incredibly strong, and after he knew how to throw a punch, they taught him to pull them. The boy had to run before speed walking. Taking a closer look over the boy, Hawks tried to look for what could be holding him back. None of the equipment on him was built to restrain him, only monitor high. Izuku adjusted the thick collar around his neck, one that was supposed to alert the boy whenever he got too far from Hawks. He wasn't allowed to go off on his own yet, but a glimpse into the recent past proved that whenever Izuku faltered in his flight, it was when he was getting ahead and starting to pick up speed. The kid was wearing a literal collar, and Hawks was yanking his leash. The same one he sometimes felt the HPSC holding him. Yeah, he was about to get a massive earful of what he was about to do. With a quick twitch of his well-trained quirk, a small, precise feather zipped over to Izuku's collar and cut it off. It fell to the ground with a loud clank, the man wincing over how much weight the kid must have been dragging around. The confused kid picked it up as if it was hardly anything, though, fiddling with the broken contraption in his hands. Let's go. Hawks began to float into the air above the boy. This time, don't worry about me catching up. Are you sure? Izuku, who had never gone without supervision after his quirks had awakened. Hawks affirmed with a solid nod as he folded his arms over the boy. I want you to give it your all this time. Don't focus on me. Don't focus on the ground. I just want you to focus on the sky. Dropping the binding collar to the ground, Izuku bent down into a deep crouch. Brushing his fingers against the dirt under him, the boy did as Hawks asked and redirected his focus. Tuning out his teacher, the forest, and even his own heartbeat, he closed his eyes and guided his senses into the gentle breeze going through the trees around him. The dirt shifted under his hand, the particles lifting around him. The deeper he became invested in the air around him. Hawks drifted himself out of the way, seeing the boy shift his gentle touch against the ground into a fist, pushing against the ground, pushing against the chains of gravity, until nothing was there to hold him back. Izuku flexed his legs and shoved himself into the sky like a speeding bullet, swarming the air and forcing Hawks to shield himself from the air currents. The boy let the momentum carry him, moving further into the sky until he felt himself slow down. It threatened to stop him, to have him float endlessly without control into the endless expanse. Mentally, he predicted the beeping noise, the stinging sensation around his neck, but it didn't come. He was left to go further, faster, until his feet forgot what the ground was like. Hawks, come in, his masters ordered through the young hero's earpiece. We're encountering errors in the investment's GPS system. Please, confirm his position. Where does it say he's at? He asked in amusement, refraining from letting out a laugh. All over the damn planet. One second he's over China and the next he's at Europe, now America, over Russia and Dash. That's right, little guy. Give them a run for their money. Hawks. Kigo Takami barely knew what he was signing up for, and by the time he realized what they would have them do, they already had their claws sunk deeply into his life. Izuku would be the bird they could never keep caged. The memory was something Hawks reflected back on frequently. Sometimes it was a good one. Sometimes he questioned if his choice was the right one or not. Other times he wished he did more or less. It was a conflicting one depending on his mood or whatever recent thing happened that changed his mind. Like right now. Izuku, in his hastily applied makeup and quick slab of the specialized hair gel, keeping his curls in check, kept his head down. Not even the costume he was wearing made him look strong enough as he was summoned to an emergency meeting to talk to the president of the HPSC. Her back was turned to them both, videos of news stations playing whatever footage of random security cameras nearby or someone who happened to have their cell phone out at the moment. All of them, with Izuku in the center and various commentators giving their thoughts on his sudden appearance. Most praised his quick, efficient action. At least, all of the ones the HPSC had a hand in their wallets. Others questioned his authority, the legality of the circumstances, how convenient it all seemed. Some sent out whack job theories that crumbled under the easiest of questions. Yet there was still a fraction of genuine doubt that pointed out how officially Superman was not a licensed hero. Without turning around, the older woman teetering at the edge of her middle age spoke with a voice that filled the emptiness around them, but didn't negate the choking silence. Actions have consequences. Her head tilted to the side, allowing Izuku to flinch at the woman's stern gaze. Do you know what yours are? Izuku had only met her in passing, never more than simple greetings and pleasantries passed as she went off to go meet the demands of her position. Never did he have a personal meeting with the woman. The fact that she was giving her full attention to this without any other board members involved meant she was putting aside everything she was doing to address this personally. That scared Izuku, made him feel guilty for something he thought wholeheartedly was good. I'm sorry. The boy sheepishly curled in on himself, unable to say more. It's true you save people that we are not upset with. With a click of her remote, the televisions froze, all of them becoming a piece of the puzzle that made up the single confident image of Superman. It's no surprise to the world that the HPSC gives its full support to Superman. He stopped all for one. He saved All Might. He's the next #1 hero. Then she fully turned towards the timid boy, Superman, behind her as she claimed ownership. Izuku was merely wearing a costume, keeping quiet, and trying not to upset the woman any further. But if Superman is acting outside the law, then the HPSC is a supporter of vigilantism. If we give an image that we are outside of the law, then the law will turn against us. Then the whole hero system that we support loses its foundation. Izuku felt himself drop even lower as she stepped to loom over him, finally understanding just how bad he messed up. He betrayed the HPSC trust after all the support they had given him. If he didn't have their help, then he would be forced to isolate himself from the entire world. This was his first mission alone, and he blew it. Do you see why this has gotten my attention? The woman asked in her eternally icy tone. Yes. Izuku bowed lower, humbling himself before her. After a second that lasted hours, the woman turned back to the screen and pointed at the image. Superman is an effort made by all of us at the HPSC to help give the world hope in these unpredictable times. Make sure to pull your weight mid-area. Yes, ma'am. With a click of her remote, the lights in the room came to life and the screens went dark. Her heels clacked against the cold floor as she made her exit. As soon as the doors closed, Izuku let out a shaky breath. Well, that went better than I expected. Hawks tried to ease the boy's nerves. Really, daring to do so, Izuku slowly straightened himself to stand. I mean, you are grounded. Oh, but, swooping in to lift his spirits, Hawks wrapped his arm around the boy's shoulder and began to escort him personally. We already got some heroes who owe us a little something to vouch for giving you permission. And if it helps, I'm going to look into the case personally and make sure that construction company keeps to code. I think they're struggling financially, Izuku admitted as they entered the hallway. Their equipment was old, and they only seemed to have half of what I would expect them to have. And their clothes, there were lots of holes. You took a peek at their underwear, didn't you? It's not like I wanted to. I had to make sure no one had any injuries and dash. I get it. Hawks backed off, throwing up his hands in mock surrender. You're doing what we trained you to do. Look out for any trouble no matter how small. Now let's get that costume back to where it belongs and wash that stuff off your face. We have your next assignment ready. What? I thought I was grounded. Definitely, but until your next field assignment, you are to memorize all the student profiles of each person attending the licensing exam and the top 100 wanted villains. Izuku paused, backtracking the information and singling out one particular part of that. Licensing exam. Well, yeah, we're pushing it to be held sooner rather than later. You're eager to do some hero work, so we'll do our best to support you as always. Placing the steadying hand to the hopeful, grateful boy who saw Hawks like an angel, the man lied right to his face. You can trust us. Life, for many, continued as normal despite so many threats and catastrophes. There was only a short rise in criminal activity after All Might's forced retirement, but after Superman's second appearance, they were doing better to keep to the shadows. Even at something as simple as a bakery, people could feel safe. No way. One of the customers, a teen with spiked hair dyed red, leaned forward across the table. You got to talk to him? Achiko, along with Tsu and two of their classmates Ijiro Kirishima and the plain skinny boy with overly round elbows Hanashiro, gathered in an attempt to keep the bonds they formed in their heroics training. It was amazing. Achiko, under the spotlight of their conversation, retold the events in her own perspective. I thought I was about to get crushed, but when I looked up, he was there holding it so effortlessly. Then with a whoosh, he got everyone to safety, and his eyes were so bright and went zop. He didn't just save my life, he saved my parents' company and did a month's worth of labor in seconds. At the end, he helped me back on my feet and double-checked that everything was okay. Dang. Shiro gave out a short whistle. Kirishima, did you ever manage to get his attention? Nah. The redhead shook his head. When we were getting Bakugo out of that mess, we were pretty much separated from where that fight was taking place. I barely saw anything. What was he like? Sue asked, managing to make her voice loud enough to be heard. He was more than a hero. Resting her hands on her cheeks, Achiko felt like she was dreaming as she pictured him in her mind. He was so gentle but unshakable with nerves of steel. Most heroes stick around for the cameras or autographs, but he didn't care for any of that. He was so cool, so confident, but he gave his attention to everyone else. He acted just like a noble knight from a fairy tale. Careful, Kirishima warned. You don't want Mina to hear you talk like that. Achiko didn't care at this point, too absorbed in her imagination of how close she managed to get to him. Wow. Sue was in awe of how stricken her friend was. Sounds like the complete opposite of the guy I met not too long ago. Oh, you met a guy? Shiro began to tease, but Sue was quick to shut that down. It's not like that. I think he was just trying to make a friend. He was super scared to approach, though. I almost mistook him for a stalker. But he was just a nervous mess. I got pretty worried when my dad showed up, but then he suddenly forgot he was afraid and looked ready to fight. That's pretty scary. Kirishima tried putting himself in her place. Did he seem unstable? No. Sue looked down at her cup of water, needing to watch her diet more carefully as she was recovering. He seemed in complete control of himself at that moment, but he's definitely on some kind of spectrum. Oh. Shiro bobbed his head in understanding. I got a brother who's like that. He is awesome at tennis and knows everything about it. But when it comes to trying to understand him on anything else, it's a struggle. Still, Kirishima continued to express his worries. The fact that his thing is fighting or confrontation. Don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on him. But wouldn't that be easy to take advantage of? Sue didn't think about it like that, but now that it was on her mind, it wouldn't leave. It wouldn't take much for someone to take advantage of that for an underground fight ring or something along the lines, or even worse, to send him after people they didn't like. Luckily, he didn't seem to have any visible bruising, and he had clean clothes. She didn't catch what quirk he had, or if he even had one. If he did, Sue hoped it was a weak one. Rubbing his sore palms against his cargo pants, Bakugo huffed as he saw a bit of red smear against his pants. Great, he was going to get nagged again over stains. Whatever, it was just a mark of his hard work. What was really irritating was the sand stuck in his shoes and socks. All those tiny annoyances added up as they kept scraping away at his heels. With the buildings around him bathed in the fiery orange light of the sunset, Bakugo reluctantly was making his way back home. He still needed a place to sleep, and he didn't have time for any other job than being the next #1 hero. He wouldn't settle for less, and that's what his parents just can't understand. Trudging his way towards the front door of his house, Bakugo hoped they already had dinner. That way, he could skip the talk and just take some leftovers to his room. Or maybe straight to the bathroom. He was starting to find some sand in his pants. As soon as he opened the door, though, he saw his mother leaning against the wall in front of him. Bakugo tried to move past her, but an arm blocked his path. "We need to talk," she sternly commanded, since someone apparently refuses to answer their phone. Rolling his eyes, Bakugo just slapped the arm away while kicking off his shoes. He heard this talk too many times already. "I don't need it, GH." With a harsh yank on the collar of his shirt, his mother was going to make him listen whether he wanted to or not. "You can't just not answer your phone whenever you like." "It's my phone, hag. I answer when I want to. Not when you have villains targeting you after you have already been kidnapped." I got out of it. Bakugo tried to worm his way out. She didn't relent, dragging his ass to throw it on the couch. "Only because you somehow have friends that cared enough to ignore the law and go rescue you after the heroes fell into a trap. I don't need the help of people who failed to do their job." "Oh yeah? What about All Might?" That made Bakugo shut up, his mother finally halting the yelling match now that he got him to listen. Taking a calming breath, Mrs. Bakugo pulled up a chair and sat down in front of him. "He came by to visit, wanting to apologize to you, and wanted you to give him another chance. All Might himself admitted he failed, time and time again, and he doesn't have the raw strength to keep you safe anymore. But still he begged for us to allow you to stay in UA, to be a better hero than he has been for you." Narrowing his questioning gaze at his mother, Bakugo hunched over onto his arms as he tried to understand the angle on this. As far as Bakugo ever knew, if you failed, if you weren't the very best, you were nothing. All Might was everything, undefeated, the strongest, and that inspired Bakugo to be even better. Now what did he think of the man that did fail? That turned into nothing more than a sorry sack of bones. Well, he didn't have an answer for that. Maybe if he let his mother continue, she was saving one. "As much as your father and I hate the idea of you going back to UA-, she stood up, folding her arms as the thought of him going back to the school that failed to keep him safe over and over again was still asking for another chance. "We still want you to receive the best training possible so that when you become a hero, no one can hurt you." This wasn't going in a direction he thought, but Bakugo wasn't going to stop her now. At the end of the summer, UA is sending its hero students to participate in a licensing exam. It's being overseen by all schools and the HPSC itself. If you get the top score in this just like you did in the practical exam, we'll let you stay in UA. With shocked silence, Bakugo felt himself standing up at the news and watching her, waiting for her to take back what she said. No, this was it. This was his chance to prove to them he knew what was best for himself, and that was nothing less than the best. "Thanks," Bakugo uttered, regretting it when his mother quickly squeezed him into a hug. He didn't fight it this time. Instead, he vowed that no matter who showed up or what tests they would throw at him, he would get the top score. No one would be a better hero than him. Izuku, stuck in his room, with the piles of folders around him, was growing bored. He had already gone through everything, memorized it, made his own notes, and went through it again. It was easier to go through paper rather than a tablet because he could take advantage of his speed. But still he was grounded and wasn't allowed outside unless it was to eat. Knowing the man was probably getting ready for bed, Izuku went over to the intercom and dialed his mentor. After 3 rings, Kigo's face with steam all around him answered. "What's up?" You could have answered audio only if you were in the shower. Izuku turned around, picking up yet again the folder going over the League of Villains. It's not like you can see anything shoulders down. Why do they even have video as an option in the showers? Trust me, kid, you don't want me to talk about it. Gross. Anyways, why did you call? Can I have access to one of the training facilities? I'm supposed to have an exam at the end of summer, right? I should be completely prepared for it. You've had years of specialized training already. This is your vacation. Browse the internet, order a pizza, play some video games. Unless you haven't started on your homework yet. I already did it, 10 times, and the extra credit. Sorry, while we appreciate your diligence, you're still grounded. Grumbling as Izuku mindlessly turned from the leader to some of the other members, he took a second to review over the HPSC's high-priority copying target before moving onto the one that had a criminal record. Himiko Toga, a dangerous shapeshifter who loved playing with knives and loved to carve into people even more. Tell you what, when you get the top mark in the exam, I'll make sure you get a reward. Closing the file, Izuku tossed it onto the pile before sitting on his bed. Don't you mean if you read all the student profiles, do you really think any of them can do better than you? It won't be mean to say no, it's just realistic. There were lots of cool quirks Izuku read about, some similar to others in some degree, but all had reasonable limitations. He didn't want to think of himself better than them, more like better equipped. Still, all of them could be great heroes, and he couldn't wait to meet many of them. I mean, there are a couple that if they caught me off guard dash. Then don't lower your guard. This is basic stuff I thought we got through your thick head. I know. Always be aware of even the smallest details of my surroundings and further. Good. Now if you'll excuse me, I think my blankets are giving me bedroom eyes. Okay? The screen went dark and Izuku was left all alone again. He could go over the villain profiles again, or he could try and relax enough to do any of the things Hawks recommended. Yet Izuku still couldn't get rid of the guilt in his gut, so all he could do was make sure he was fully prepared for the next mission. Floating up towards the ceiling to sit near the light, he glanced towards one file that was tucked near his desk. Puckering his lips tightly, he quickly inhaled to pull it closer to himself until it was in arm's reach. Izuku might have not given this one enough attention. It was tied to a past he tried to forget and leave behind. But Izuku always knew that on his path to be a hero, he would eventually cross paths with him again. Opening it up, the information inside was all too familiar to the super-powered boy. Katsuki Bakugo. I hope you're nicer, but this file makes me think otherwise. Chapter 5. The buses normally felt crowded, loud, packed with young teens overexcited and brimming with energy. That's how classes used to feel, fun with smiles all around. Now it felt hollow, just like the bus they were in. Kirishima looked over all of the empty seats, trying to muster up enough courage just to act like he's still happy despite everything. So, Bakugo dash. Shut up. At least some things never changed. I don't understand it. A blonde boy with slicked back hair wearing a tailored suit for his hero costume. He leaned over the two from the back seat, looking down on them in more ways than one. Neither of you seem to learn. You try to make friends with one of the least likable persons to exist despite his animosity towards everyone and everything. And on the other end, Bakugo, you keep trying to push away the only person who might just be able to look past your unsightly dash. Monoma, a boy with no lips and faded white hair, uttered in warning. Knock it off. It all went quiet again, each person keeping to themselves again. Sheesh. Manga leaned back into his seat next to Yui. It's like there's barely anyone left that can just be chill. I know, right? A feminine voice said right in front of him, from someone he couldn't even see. It's so dreary. Who said that? Me, the invisible girl right in front of you. Hagakure, remember? Right, he should have guessed. Everyone. Their teacher, clad in a red outfit with thick gauntlets and silver hair, announced from the front of the automated vehicle. We're here. With everyone bracing their feet against the floor, the bus came to a stop in front of the massive building. Several other buses were lined up alongside theirs, each depositing several teens clad in colors and spandex. Hero schools across Japan had sent many hopeful students to prove their worth to participate in the super-powered law enforcement system. Wow! The invisible girl, Toru Hagakure, gazed around at what might be thousands of hero students. I didn't realize there would be this many. This was a smaller turnout than I expected. One of her classmates, who was elegant in her step but had a revealing red outfit. Japan has over 1,000 heroes in service, and at least 20 times the number of hero graduates don't make it into the industry. No way! Kirishima suddenly yelled out, rushing over towards a group of teens that were dressed in more casual attire. Can't believe you guys are here. Hey man, Zero shouted back with a wave, accompanied by many of Class 1A. Sorry for leaving my foam finger at home. Holy crap! Toru sprinted past Kirishima, enveloping a pink-skinned girl with a single yellow horn in a tight hug alongside Achiko. Mina, Achiko, I didn't think you two would be able to make it. It was tough, Achiko admitted while giving some pats, but I got a ride. Oh, I missed this. Mina sighed as she leaned into the hug. I wish I could have stayed in UA. Yeah. A larger boy with thick muscles and fairly large lips, Rikito Sato, agreed. Even though most of us are transferred to other hero schools, we have to finish up the year before we can take the licensing exam. Kirishima almost allowed a manly tear to fall from his eye. So many friends they had struggled through adversity with were here to cheer them on despite knowing each other for such a short time. He briefly looked over to see if this was something that could even move Bakugo, but the only direction he was moving was towards the entrance. He didn't make any remarks, no yelling, just dead focus on his goal. Even the silent, bi-colored boy Todoroki lingered at the sight of all his previous classmates. Everyone. Their current class leader, the tall Ravenet, Momo Yaoyorozu, got their attention. I'd love it if we could spend some time afterwards to chat, but for now we should probably go to our respective areas. Class press is right. An energetic blonde boy with a black lightning bolt in his hair, Denki Kaminari, quickly agreed. Let's go find our seats. The children shifted amongst each other, the horde condensing itself to squeeze through the tightly packed doors until all the examinees crammed themselves into a tight, white room. Seriously, who thought it was a good idea to cram a bunch of sweaty teenagers into a single room to await? That was how school normally was. Just as he was starting to wonder when the exam was going to start, a tired, lazy man in a suit got up to the single podium overlooking the tight room, began to speak through the speakers surrounding them. Hello, hello? Is this thing on? It better be, because I'm only going to go over this once. So basically, you all will have 3 tag discs you can place anywhere on your person so long as it's visible. You'll also have some tag balls you can use to take out others. To eliminate someone, hit all 3 of their discs. Get enough people out, your discs buzz green, and you pass. If it buzzes red, you're out. Be sure to leave the testing area once you're done so you aren't in the way. The computers will keep track of all the details, but know that only 100 of you will qualify for the second half of the exam. All right then, get your stuff and get ready. While Kirishima began to think of multiple questions regarding the details around this rule set, many of the crowd shifted towards pieces of the wall sliding open to reveal the equipment. It became increasingly harder and harder as the front of the group got their stuff and immediately had to push their way to the center as the rest were squeezing the opposite direction to get their own discs and sport balls. Kirishima would admit that UA seemed to have lots of resources, more than he would ever imagine a school could have to teach a class. For crying out loud, they could wreck mock cities to their heart's content, and they would patch it up for the next day. But this place seemed to barely be able to let them stand in the same room. How did they expect a full-scale hero test to be held here? When the last student managed to pin the last disc to their costume, that's when Kirishima saw the walls fall backwards to reveal the testing grounds. A massive indoor arena, with varying buildings and environments similar to how the USJ facility was built. Wow, okay, and he thought UA was extra in its grand reveals sometimes. Off to the far side beyond the edge of the battle area was an array of stands next to a viewing room sealed off in thick glass and several shadows standing behind it. Along the benches for an audience, the redhead could make out the familiar, friendly faces of his former classmates. Even if they didn't bring banners, flags, or even a foam finger, just seeing them, there was more than enough support to make him want to do his best. All right, I almost forgot. The man again spoke out to the crowd of teenagers. We're having a special guest with us today. Whoa, hey. Manga came over with Yui to associate with one of the few friendly persons left in the hero class of UA. You think All Might's gonna show? We haven't seen him since, you know. So soon. Momo stepped into the conversation. While it would be wonderful to see him, I hope he wouldn't push himself too far. Kirishima silently agreed, the quiet girl nodding as well. All Might did a lot, and to be taught personally by him was a dream besides all of the attacks. Still, it was hard to believe that the powerful man they got to see in person so many times was the same one that made a public statement of retirement. The skinny man with a cane who claimed to be All Might looked so tired to where he couldn't even smile. The first thing Kirishima noticed was all of the murmurs and whispers cutting out, all of the hero students going silent all around him. All he could hear was the subtle billowing of a cape above them. Glancing to the source, where everyone was staring, was him. He hovered over them, his firm stature fixed above them with the symbol of hope on his chest. The way the light was hitting it almost made it seem like it was glowing along with his emerald eyes. Despite the power that emanated from his frame, he only looked down towards them in gentleness. You have 10 minutes to scatter, then we'll begin. I'll be napping until the computer tallies it all up. Well, that was a surprise. After being nearly dragged along by her former classmates, Siu was picked up from her home by friends such as Achiko, Siro, Mina, and Sato. Of course, she couldn't stay too far from home without all of her medication and couldn't move for too long without rest. That's why they showed up, teenagers that were in training to be the physical peak of humanity that could easily help carry her along to wherever they went. Well, it helped that one of them had super strength and the other could make her float around like she was in space. Siu predicted this would be an exciting time, one she would have to be sure to keep herself calm for. As short as her time in UA, there was never a day that went by without heavy amounts of excitement. It was hard sometimes, separating all of the heart-pounding exercises with the near-death experience. Hopefully, this could help separate the bad from the good. Are they all really crammed in that little room? Siro leaned on his overly rounded elbows. I can't imagine all of those guys being crammed in something a little over the size of our own classroom. Our class was really big. Siu recalled her first day entering the class. Not even half as tall as the door, just to enter. The room was massive, the desks not even reaching to the back wall, and evenly spaced. Not that it ever stopped Mineta from. Reminded of the small boy that was ripped apart in front of her, thrashing in the water as claws and hooks sunk into him, those massive jaws coming right for her. Hey, Achiko gently rubbed the girl's good shoulder. Do you need anything? In, out, and focus on the present. Go through each sense and ground herself. I'm good. The human frog went to her bag for a bottle of water. Just need to hydrate. The box containing the examinees fell apart, allowing all the contestants within to see the vast area they had access to. Oh boy, Kaminari nearby rubbed his hands in excitement. Here we go. Man, Sato sighed as he looked at his own empty backpack. I wish they didn't confiscate all the cookies I made for this. Yeah. One girl sitting next to Kaminari wearing a punk rock jacket with elongated earlobes that ended with headphone jacks, Kyokujiro, rested her chin on her propped-up arm. They're really uptight with security. I was looking forward to those. One thing that Jiro had that many others didn't was advanced hearing, so she perked up slightly when the main doors to the testing grounds opened up. Was this their test proctor or something? No. Instead, it was someone else, someone that made so little public appearance but managed to shake the country. Holy shit, Jiro uttered as he floated forward towards the group. No way. Achiko gripped Tsiu's arm tightly, bouncing in place as she looked on with stars in her eyes. No friggin' way. He's here. Oh, All Might, he's here, and I get to see him twice out of 3 times he's shown up. I shouldn't have skipped deodorant today, But it's not like he can smell me from here, right? But why couldn't he? He can do so many things, and if he can smell me, he can hear me. Oh, please tell me he can't hear me. He paused his flight, Superman seemingly freezing in place for a long moment before lowering down towards the ground. Deciding to tease her friend's fangirling moment, Tia leaned over towards Achiko and whispered in her ear, "I think he heard you. Sue, don't even joke about that." Bakugo kept control of himself, and if you asked him, he was doing a damn good job of not detonating that fake's head off. The moment that everyone was gawking at his entrance, it caught him off guard. It briefly filled him with a sliver of terror he had during the Kamino incident. Something about the way he just floated stiffly without even a twitch of a muscle just screamed strong. His face, though, something about it seemed horribly wrong and just screamed, "Hit me, I dare you." Even his palms kept sweating like his body was just begging to blast that look of superiority off his stupid mug. He knew that if he wanted to be the best, he had to knock this guy down from the podium he stole from All Might. Right now, he had to play by their rules. He had to get the top score by their standards, not his own. And he knew, if he had the choice to take on Small Fry or him, Bakugo would be able to rack up his score higher and faster fighting anyone but him. "Hey Baku bro, you want to team up?" No. Holding himself back from just blowing shitty hair away to go off and not be held back, Bakugo reanalyzed his position. He was very aware of the predatory gaze from all the other schools eyeing what little remained of UA. Despite the school's recent failures, it had continually held the rank of #1 hero school for many years, and that didn't go away so easily. It might be up for debate from their screw-ups, but no other school had yet to have the opportunity to prove themselves better. This was that moment. This was the time where all other hero schools were putting pressure on their students to finally bring UA down a peg for them to steal the top. It's exactly what that caped bastard did to All Might. It's what they want to do to him. Nah, he'd come out on top, and he wouldn't even let his pride get in the way. Fine. Bakugo huffed. Wait, seriously? It thought you would have dash. Shut it. I've got a plan, so keep quiet and listen up, because I'll only say it once. Same goes for all of you. His gesture to the rest of the UA students managed to rally together all 9 remaining classmates. Wait, 8? Seriously? That's how many were left after all the shit they went through? Whatever. That meant less people he had to get to learn. If we want to get through this, we gotta get through it without holding anything back. So what are your quirks? He commanded as he folded his arms, only to grow frustrated after none of them answered. Seriously? Monoma scoffed in annoyance. You feel so superior, that dash. I already know you, copycat. Bakugo dismissed whatever complaints he had, moving on to the next person. Same with you, shitty hair. I already know your quirk. Hey, are you listening? Half and half. One boy who was almost as quiet as Yui had already stopped listening. One half of his hair white hanging just over his gray eye, and the other side of his bangs served as a fiery red curtain for his electric blue eye, with a large burn mark around it. He only had one thing to say. I don't need any of your help. Well, where were you when our classmates were dying? Monoma held nothing back, scowling at the #2 hero's prized son, Shoto Todoroki. The boy stopped, turned back, and with an icy, harsh voice uttered, I was competent enough to live. Hey, Hagakure reminded everyone she existed. Just because you ended up with a good quirk doesn't mean you're more important than us. No, just stronger. Then he walked off, going on his own path that he refused to let anyone follow behind him. For once, Monoma looked over to the floating pair of gloves. It appears we have something in common with your class. That's enough. Momo cut down the jabs and bickering. There's hardly any of us left, and by now I think we all realize that there's no class A or B. We are UA, and if we can survive villains, then we can certainly pass a test. Her leadership managed to settle the disputes among the classmates, but Bakugo wasn't buying the whole tall and confident facade. There was a shadow of hesitation around her, a quivering in her voice, and her fists kept shaking against her will. Is this really the best he had to work with? It was one thing to enter into a fight, knowing who to hit and how hard. It was another thing knowing people needed saving, rushing to stop the obstacle or move them out of the way. It was a completely different thing to suddenly show up and just have everyone stare at you, and you couldn't leave. Well, the walls couldn't hold him, but he needed to be here. If he wanted to do hero work on the right side of the law, Izuku had to be here, surrounded by watchful eyes, lots of people staring at him. No, not him. Superman. So how should he react? Superman probably shouldn't say anything about what the girl in the stands was saying. As he descended from the air above the crowd, they stepped aside thankfully, giving him some personal space. Should he say anything? They weren't. No one besides the people in the stands and the ones in the booth were talking. If the whole test went like this, that would be okay with him. You have 10 minutes to scatter, then we'll begin. I'll be napping until the computer tallies it all up. When the announcer finally broke the peace, and suddenly everyone was rushing to talk to him. Hey, Superman. One group of daring teenagers ran up to him, led by a boy with shaggy black hair, baggy pants, and a really small vest that showed off his torso. Why don't you team up with us? He read their files. Yoshindo quirk vibrate, Tatama Nakagame quirk telescopic, Shiki Makabe quirk stiffening, Itajiro Totiki quirk boomerang. All students at Ketsubutsu Academy, second year's class 2 taught by Ms. Joke, who is supposedly married to Eraserhead according to some sources, including her, but Eraserhead did make one public statement that it was not true. No way. A group of students from Seijin dressed as multicolored ninjas immediately protested. Superman, don't listen to what Ketsubutsu Academy has to offer. We at Seijin are above dash. He didn't realize someone was coming from behind until he felt something slither over his shoulders. Ducking down and quickly moving out of whoever was touching him, Superman spun around to face whoever managed to sneak past his well-trained senses. It was a girl with long fawn-colored hair that reached just below her shoulders, wearing a very tight black uniform from Shiketsu High School. Kami Utsushimi, quirk glamour. She put her hands up in a gentle show of submission, showing she was carrying a couple of the discs used. Hiya. Hi. He greeted, making sure to keep his voice even and strong, just as he practiced so many times. Oh, of course. One of Kami's classmates from the same class rolled his eyes. Seiji Shishikura, quirk meatball. He teams up with Tits McGee from Whore Island. I'm not teaming up with anyone, Superman declared firmly, then softened his tone a fraction as he addressed the crowd around himself. This test was designed to make sure we're all ready for the field of hero work. I don't fault anyone for wishing to team up with one another, but I need to know for myself that if help isn't around, I can still save lives. Of course, afterwards when we pass, I'd be glad to have someone watching my back from time to time. They didn't say anything. Why wasn't anyone saying anything? Oh crap, don't tell him. He said something very wrong and ended up making everyone feel like he was looking down on them. I like your style, Superman. A taller fit boy also from Shiketsu, wearing a rather large cloak, yelled out in enthusiasm. Inasa Yarashi quirk gale force. He stomped his way forward, filled with more energy than 50 men put together in one body. In fact, I like it so much I'll hold myself to the same standard. Same here. One hero student said. Me too, another person called out. One by one, Izuku was looking around himself and seeing so many students his own age deciding to listen to him, to accept his words and embrace them. It was something new he had never experienced. No one called him names, no one ignored him or insulted him for something he was holding himself to. Even if he was Superman right now and not Izuku Midoriya, it still felt good. An object was tossed his way, Superman identifying it before he caught it. One of the testing discs, thrown to him by Kami, who had 2 others in her hands. We aren't on a team, but we can still be nice to each other, right? Letting a little bit of his own smile leak into his practiced one, Izuku accepted the offer. Thanks. Everyone ready to begin? The exhausted man's voice carried itself through the loudspeakers, a tense air immediately replacing the inspirational one from before. Let's go. Kirishima hardened his knuckles as he smacked them together. 5. The students began rushing away from Superman, all moving to find proper starting positions. 4. The spectators in the stands leaned forward, Achiko gripping onto Tsu in excitement. 3. The observers in the booth, teachers and judges tuning into various screens and sensors. 2. Bakugo flexed his sweaty palms, ready for a fight against it all. 1. Izuku closed his eyes and embraced Superman. Beep. And looks like someone's passed already. Good luck, everyone else. The fighting didn't start, everyone pausing as their minds processed the news. That couldn't be right. There was no time for anyone to have done anything. What? A student from Sejin was gripping his costume, looking down at the 3 red, glowing discs on his body. It just started? How could I get out? Me too. A girl wearing a pristine white uniform from CI Academy complained audibly. There has to be a glitch. No. Momo checked her own uniform, horrified at seeing that out of all of her fellow classmates, she was marked in 3 red discs. I couldn't fail already. Not again, not so fast. Bakugo realized what happened, and with a sharp glare he directed his attention upwards above the crowd. There he was, floating above them all with 3 silver discs on his chest lit up in green. Then he froze, seeing Superman slightly pivot his body to face him. Superman was looking right at him, and it wasn't just some mild interest. No, Superman was well aware of Bakugo's presence, and now the explosive blonde knew it. He could have been taken out just then, but he wasn't. That caped bastard spared him, and Bakugo was more than enraged. He was scared, because Superman could have cut his future off right then and there, and he couldn't have done anything about it. While school was technically out for the summer, many members of the UA staff still found themselves busy, at least the ones that were left anyways. Within the vast, well-maintained lawns of the school grounds was a pleasant gazebo tucked away in the trees. The principal, no matter how chaotic things may get, still did his best to refocus his mind in simple tranquility, usually with some company that needed such a thing. Sitting across from the table of specially arranged teas was a rather frail body of a man. No, not Toshinori Yagi. Instead, it was one of the other teachers who was forced to undergo medical leave due to crippling injuries. With his one good arm, a man with a very short haircut and easy-to-change clothes squinted with his only working eye at the cup in his hand. "Aizawa, how are you adjusting to the new arm?" Nizu asked with a raised cup, sipping on it to savor every drop. The man looked on, twitching to adjust his face to the large eye patch covering the empty socket in his head. Raising the other metallic hand up, he twitched the chrome digits to test its dexterity. "I don't like it." "Or is it your pets aren't accustomed to it yet?" Nizu's assumption was correct, the way the man sighed with the lingering loneliness seeping out. While it was a simple tease, it was only to break the ice for further conversation. "Will you be joining us for the second semester?" Nizu posed, to which Aizawa dragged out by putting a rather large serving of cream in his drink. "You think I have the strength to teach anymore?" The underground hero bumped his elbow against the mechanized wheelchair he sat in. "Strength was never the attribute I depended on for my teachers." The principal answered with a short sip. "Patience is one of the foundation elements to a teacher." "Then you should have never hired me." A small device in Nizu's vest began to chirp, the mammal lowering his cup of tea onto the table with a hard clank. Aizawa kept to himself, well aware not to interrupt the principal's private time unless it was something very important. Worry spread through his gut, praying to whatever deity would listen that fate would be kind enough not to add another heartbreaking revelation to their rapidly growing list. With a short tap of his paw bean, Nizu spoke aloud in dread. "This is Nizu, go ahead Vlad. First, I should mention that no one is hurt, and we're not under attack. This channel was used for emergencies only, so the fact that there didn't seem to be one only made them more curious and far more scared about what might be happening." "What's happening?" Nizu shorted his speech as much as possible, wanting more details as fast as possible. "Superman is here at the exam, and Yakumura Mera bothered to announce his arrival." The fuzzy head of UA rested back on the cushioned seat, Aizawa observing with his functional eye towards what kind of reaction would be given. "Thank you. Gain as much intel as you can, and do not let your eyes off the students." "Copy." The principal wasted no time finishing his tea, pulling out a tablet from under his chair and already typing away as he hopped down from his spot. "I'm sorry to cut our time short, but it seems there is something I should address as soon as possible." "The HPSC is playing favorites," Eraserhead asked, gulping down his own cup and pushing the joystick on his chair arm forward. "You think they have a grip on the new guy?" "They have a grip on Hawks. The principal leapt up to rest himself on the man's paralyzed legs as he motioned his wheelchair to lead them to the principal's office. Superman could very well be the whole arm. Chapter 6. Are you quirkless? The question was posed to the young man with curly locks of green and prominent feathers, sitting on a wide, comfortable couch. Not anymore. Izuku Midoriya, 12 years old, replied to the rather friendly person in casual yet professional attire sitting across from him. So you changed. The unknown man focused briefly towards his tablet, barely looking down for a second before resuming his calming demeanor. Yes. What parts of you have changed? I'm stronger now. I can see a lot, hear really small noises from far away. I'm so fast that I can run alongside bullets. Yes, you can do a lot now. The man made a few quick typing motions on the tablet, reviewing over his notes. But tell me, Midoriya, with all these changes, do you see yourself any differently? Huh. His emerald orb seemed to focus again, trying to find something to answer the question for him. I don't really know. Well, let's imagine you're sitting with a younger version of yourself, before you realized you had a quirk, but not much younger. He gestured to the empty spot on the couch next to Izuku, letting the boy visualize a rather frail, timid, quirkless boy. Do you see him? Izuku wasn't sure if he had a rather vivid imagination or it was this man's quirk, but he could see him. Himself, hardly 9 years old, looking up to him with the same expression Izuku had. Yes. If that younger version of you knew he had a quirk and could use it, how different would he be to you? Well, he'd probably be younger still, so not as strong, and without the training and the sensory deprivation areas, he'd probably be overwhelmed. Anything else? I'm not sure. Izuku kept looking over the boy, trying to find anything different, but besides being younger and shorter, there wasn't a lot he could see different between them. So you have the same interests, the same goals, and the same worries? The man leaned in, pushing for a more precise answer. Yeah, I guess we do. Izuku answered honestly. Sometimes the HPSC brought unfamiliar people to him, ones that would ask specific questions or have unique tests that were outside routine training. He wasn't sure why they brought this man here, but there had to be a reason. What about fears? The man's soft expression was practiced, but when Izuku glanced back, it seemed so hollow the closer he focused on the topic. Are you still afraid of the same things? Yes. Izuku felt slightly uncomfortable with where this was going, but it was supposed to help. Find whatever fault he had to help him correct it. Are you afraid of the same person? A crack of noise followed by a flash of light flared at the front of Izuku's vision, making him recoil in anticipation for the searing pain. He hadn't felt real pain in a while. Sometimes he managed to push his muscles to a point they felt stretched out and hot, but this was different. The memory of this pain never went away. Outside the room, in a separate chamber with a few monitors, professionals had all sorts of screens and boards pinned up around them, all with various data, history, and most of them had the image of a fiery blonde boy with a rather powerful quirk. In combat simulations, they already used explosions 20 to 30 times more powerful than what Izuku had ever experienced before he ended up in their care. Standing at the head of the room was one of the most powerful members in the HPSC, also likely the oldest, with a full, bushy mustache. The door opened to the room. The young man who was constantly involved with Izuku's progress entered. So, Higo was in his training top, sport pants with red wings exposed. You guys see what I'm talking about? Yes. The wise man held up a paper, a summarized background analysis of Katsuki Bakugo, one of the most influential persons in Izuku Midoriya's life from before. It seems there is another obstacle we didn't anticipate. He thought he was quirkless most of his life. Higo shrugged, as it was simply a fact of the world. He's always been someone's punching bag. Let's be glad he hasn't sought to return the pain he harbors. The board member sighed in some relief, because out of the two options of having the boy be afraid rather than seeking to make others afraid, this was easier to work with. Especially now that Izuku Midoriya was projected to become almost as strong as All Might. Though who knows how accurate that data was, given the absolute mystery to his power. Higo took a peek at the sheet the man was holding, seeing the perpetual scowl marked on the kid's face. Do we need to take him out of the picture? No. The verdict was announced as the suited older gentleman put the paper down. If Midoriya believes that Bakugo will become a hero, it will keep him alert if he knows they might see each other again. We don't need complacency, we need persistence. If they do meet one day, the HPSC will make sure that Midoriya can see firsthand that no matter his fear, he will be prepared to handle it. So long as he remembers who is giving him the pillars of support, keeping him together. Izuku had passed the first test. In about a second, he already was moving on to the next part. While his tests normally ended fairly quickly, the HPSC was usually starting him in the middle of a combat simulation. This felt so easy in comparison. The word left a bad taste in his mouth as he could already see how much the others were struggling. Standing alone in the passing lounge area, Izuku could see through the walls to observe No, he wasn't Izuku right now. He was Superman. Glancing back to witness the onslaught of hero students battling one another, he kept an eye on the UA students. They were fighting hard, barely keeping themselves from getting disqualified from moving on despite their teamwork. Mongo appeared exhausted already, but still he pushed on. Many schools had targeted those from UA, perhaps to try and uproot their time in the spotlight or to see if the villains that continually assaulted them were fighting well-trained heroes or a bunch of unlucky students. Superman couldn't help but keep a very close eye on Casey, Bakugo. Geez, he thought he got over that a long time ago. Izuku got over it, and Superman never even spoke a word to Bakugo. But the way that the once childhood friend seemed to flare up at him right after Superman passed, it was targeted not just simple jealousy or rage. Bakugo, for some reason, did not like Superman, and it was personal. Unless his disguise was useless against someone who had known him for most of their lives. Yet Bakugo never looked at him like that before, not like he used to. Realizing he was starting to drudge up some old memories that were distracting him, Superman swept his gaze over the stands to see the many friends that came in support. He observed simple conversations between friends, commentary on the events below, and just in case he double-checked to make sure Azuitsu's injuries hadn't worsened. The stitches were out, but thick lines of scar tissue were marked across several areas. Oh, there was Momo Yaoyorozu, halfway through the hallway to her friends, bawling her eyes out. Utters of apologies, being useless, she was in a very bad state, and he might have caused it. It wasn't personal, and it wasn't tactical. Superman picked at random because he didn't want to show any bias towards who he would eliminate. But he will admit, she had such amazing potential to be a great hero, and it broke his heart to see her give up hope on herself. Pulling out his phone, he sent a text to the on-site supervisor for the HPSC he was told to communicate with if he had any concerns or requests. Superman, am I free to walk around the halls until the next event? Pillow, sure, just don't be late. Why was his icon a pillow? Must be an inside joke. Superman, thank you. Putting his phone away, Izuku collected himself to fully embrace the idea, the persona of Superman. His limited experience talking to those of his own age, or even girls, was incredibly small. He would be better one day, but right now he had to push his anxiety away because someone needed help and no one else realized it. He hovered a few inches off the ground, before blurring through the building and stopping just before entering her sights. One last breath to collect himself, putting his feet back on the ground. He walked around the corner to slowly approach the girl. Excuse me. He spoke up, a little louder than he normally would, but in her illusion of being isolated from prying eyes and ears, she wasn't trying to restrain her sorrow. She stopped crying abruptly, her voice choking as her eyes snapped up to him. Once she wiped her eyes and saw Superman before her, the disbelief overshadowed her mood. You? She whispered, before regaining her composure to appear as a proper member of her influential family. I'm terribly sorry you had to see me like this. I was just... But then the memories resurfaced, of her broken promises, of her losses and failures, all of them preventable if she had just been good enough. Superman took a few more steps closer, and instead of standing tall above her like the titanic presence he carried, he swept his cape to the side and sat down right beside her. He kept quiet, lingering on the verge of a conversation, yet no words came from him. Was he waiting for her to say something? Or trying to find the words himself to someone he never talked to before? Just as Momo was beginning to question whether she needed to say something, he finally uttered something so quick and hushed, she almost missed it. I'm sorry for tagging you out so fast. No. She shielded her vision from him, not wanting to waste anyone's efforts to help someone so hopeless. No, I think I needed that. A reminder that I can't do it. I keep letting people down, betraying my friends' trust in protecting them and dash. She shuddered, fingers growing cold as she curled further on herself. I'm useless. No. He said it so firmly, with absolute surety that she couldn't help but look up towards his solid gaze. The man who effortlessly defeated any foe before him. Superman waited to make sure she was listening before speaking. No one is useless. Then he seemed to turn his eyes away, most likely to avoid a temptation to peek at her revealing outfit, like many others. But he wasn't like others. His reasoning and his actions were in a world she couldn't hope to reach. Forgive me for stating, but that must be easy for you to say. Wiping at the streaks that probably made her appear more disheveled than ever, Momo began to close herself off. You are so much more than I. Your skill, precision, and quirk are just so dash. I thought I was quirkless for more than half my life. Izuku said, before silently cursing at himself for revealing a key to discover who he was so fast in the field. The HPSC was very strict about keeping his identity secret, and here he was betraying their trust again. But it felt like she needed to hear this. I was called useless a lot, and I might have believed it. I couldn't protect anyone, not even myself. I almost gave up so many times on my dreams, the idea of becoming helpful. He glanced back to her for a quick second, glad that her sobs had stopped to the point where she was more focused on him than what bothered her. Though he wished she didn't stare up at him so much, it was making talking to her way harder than it should, even if he kept reminding himself that Superman was strong enough to talk to girls. What changed? Superman unclenched his hands, trying to be subtle about steadying his breathing and not quivering under her attention. Well, a lot after my quirk finally awakened. But I didn't see myself any more capable for a while. I was scared and felt so alone. I could barely do anything but try to not to let my quirk overwhelm me. But eventually I found someone, people who were committed to helping me, to giving me the tools and the training to get a hold of myself. The girl glanced down again, but instead of the downward spiral of self-hate, she pondered on his words. Once the muttering of the girl's name brushed against his ears, he focused in to hear how many of her former classmates in the stands were asking about her and trying to contact her. Momo had good friends. Standing back up, Superman offered a hand to her, using all his willpower not to shy away from her touch, and in a steady motion, he lifted her up undeterred, like nothing could stop him from helping her. Do you need anything? I could grab some water or snacks from Dash. No, thank you though. She sighed as she let go of the emotional baggage harboring her. You've been more help than I thought I deserved. He helped her, or Superman did, and that thought finally let him let go of his nervousness for a moment. There's nothing more important I could have done. Superman smiled before starting to walk off, his work not finished yet. There was only so much he could do for her, only so much he understood or connected with her in that brief moment. There were others who were better suited for the task. But, can I ask that you not tell anyone about my past? It's rather Dash. Of course. She gave a small appreciative bow. It's the least I can do. Thank you. He began to walk off, already mapping out the route in his mind on how to get to her friends. Yet she remained in place, finally giving thought to who had visited her. Momo hadn't formed an official opinion of the young hero who had stepped in where all might had fallen, battling against villains who had terrorized and murdered those around her many times. So for someone of that stature to give someone like her not just a glance, but of his full attention, it was enough to begin hoping for a better tomorrow. In the audience stands that didn't hold too many people, there was a small group that was so loud they made up the difference. Previous members of UA's Class 1A. Come on, Todoroki. Get your head in the game. Zero shouted like a drunk at a sports event. Stop letting them flank you and get back with your team. Hit him hard, Kirishima. Sato was next to yell out. Don't let up. Show him what UA is all about, Kaminari added, really wishing he had a foam finger right now. You know, Dash, Sue turned over to face the rather boisterous teens. We're not technically UA students anymore. You might even end up going to the same school you're rooting against. Oh yeah. Zero briefly acknowledged before seeing a rather large group, now teaming up to jump his previous classmates. But Kugo, you better provide cover if Todoroki isn't gonna dash. Boom. Yes. Zero cheered as the very guy he was yelling at did exactly what he hoped he would. If you needed ruthless violence and explosions, Bakugo was always dependable. I get what you're saying. Kaminari spoke over through the chaos. But we're bonded for life. UA forever, right? Yeah. Leaning over the railing, Mina herself echoed the phrase throughout the stadium. UA forever. It was because they were yelling so much that none of them noticed someone walking right up to their class. Sato felt a tap on his shoulder, and while he was taller and built like a power lifter, he gasped as he realized he was being greeted as someone who was being held above All Might's strength. Superman was standing in arm's distance, pulling his arm back quickly as his eyes flickered between the students. Excuse me, but one of your classmates is in the hall down a level and dash. Is it Momo? Mina, the socialite that she had no issue talking to whoever whenever, especially when it concerned her friends. Yes. Superman nodded. I think, well, she could use a friend right now. Without needing any other reason, Mina latched onto one of her gal pals to make sure Momo was going to get hugged into oblivion. Come on, Kyoka. Why me? Kyoka Jiro didn't resist and didn't need an answer upon glancing to the only other two girls present. One was crippled and still couldn't move easily, and the other looked like she was in some kind of trance. Superman made sure he was out of the way when the two girls rushed out, yet once he turned around he was immediately assaulted by the class. Yes, sir. Zero came up as he straightened his posture to treat Superman with respect. Never got to say it, but thanks for saving us back at Kamino. Oh, you're welcome, but dash. My God. Kaminari slung his arm around Superman's shoulders. Listen, not sure if you're going to be the next All Might, but so far you've helped out our class twice. But aren't you technically a vigilante? How does that dash? He's a hero. Achiko had snapped out of her shock, quick to come to his defense, and once Superman acknowledged her again, she nearly melted right there. What I mean is Super Sirman. Well, I thought heroes were almost unbeatable, and All Might was the best, but even with him over our class, we couldn't handle real villains. But you actually saved us. Everyone the moment you showed up, and you won. You saved me, my family's company, and lived up to what it means to be a hero. Whoa, hey. Sato backtracked as he hoped she didn't say what he thought she did. Are you saying All Might isn't a hero? He is. Achiko quickly rebutted, before turning herself away from him. A professional one, but the kind of hero everyone dreams of is just like Dash. Her eyes met those brilliant ones that practically sparkled, and Achiko lost the ability to speak again. Kaminari let go of the invulnerable hero as Superman had yet to really give a proper response to any of them. With an unexpected silence unbeknownst to them all, Izuku was currently struggling very hard to come up with something to say because he couldn't think of anything that Superman would respond with. Sue, however, was never one to let an awkward pause deter her. Giving a short push along Achiko's back, the brunette nearly stumbled as she was given an encouraging nudge. Why don't you ask for a photo? I could never. The girl's face brightened to a shade of red that practically glowed. I don't mind. Superman inwardly pulled at his very many memories of being trained on how to smile properly for a camera. Yet this was all so fast still, and being around all these people his age so close in such a casual setting was harder than catching bullets. Hear that? Zero pulled out his phone as he jumped over a row of seats to get in front of the two. You can get a photo with the man himself. Just let me get one afterwards. Hey Dash. Kaminari held out his hand towards the bumbling ball of nerves that was Achiko. Let me see your phone, and I'll take a picture for you. Her phone doesn't have a camera, Sato reminded him. Achiko was more than tense, and believe it or not, it was probably equal to what Izuku was feeling despite his trained posture. The girl waddled carefully closer to him, following Zero's waving to get them closer to fit inside the frame. Okay, the boy gave a thumbs up. Now just relax, like your life isn't in danger. Achiko gave a shaky nod, fighting the urge to hide her face in her hands as she could practically hear him breathing so close to her. Now say heroes. Heroes. She muttered as the noises around her seemed to blur out as she was drowning in Superman's immediate presence. Thinking about it, he only had 3 public appearances, and the fact that she was present for 2 of them and indirectly part of his first, Achiko, was extremely lucky. Odds were she would never meet him again. So this time she pushed her luck just a little more. Superman? See, could I, if it's okay with you? You don't have to, but would why you sign something for me? Izuku felt a sliver of guilty pleasure from the request. He personally collected so many hero signatures, and to be asked to do the same felt like he was so much closer to being an official hero. Yes, that came out a little too eager, so coughing into his hand, he composed himself. What would you like me to sign? Achiko didn't think that far, and while her first thought was for him to sign her shirt, that might be going too far. Same with her face. She wanted something she could hang up on the wall and look at every day. I don't have a notebook or dash. Iron. The smell was always there, but this was different. This was something Izuku had been trained to detect from the slightest whiffs. Blood was in the air, and while there were faint hints of it here and there from scratches several of the examinees received in the physical test, or just women dealing with their cycles, this was too much at once. Falling into his training, locking onto the task, Superman swept his eyes over the arena to follow where it was coming from. It didn't take long, because he found a small pouch of it being held in a certain girl's hand. Shiketsu High School's Kami Utsushimi, quirk Glamour, was drinking it. Briefly confused and disturbed, he tried to reason as to why she would do that. It wouldn't be nutritionally valuable compared to several other alternatives, and her quirk didn't need it. But there was another quirk that required it, and it belonged to someone who could transform with it. Peering through the surface of her skin, he saw that there was an unusual layer of flesh over her body with another one tucked away, bound inside by malleable cells that were drinking the red fluids. There was also something he didn't notice before tucked away in the transformation, a rather worn blade with old red stains along the steel. There was no mistaking it now. He knew who was hidden behind the disguise. His own mind almost jumped at intervening with the evidence provided, only keeping him in place due to a reminder that he had been grounded for acting out of the law on his own. Just as Izuku was about to reach for his smaller phone to report the intruder, he somehow lost track of her. How? She wasn't fast enough to leave his sights, and he only just looked away for less than a second. A worrying fear weighed in his gut that something was about to happen, something he could have stopped if he acted right away. It clashed against the other thoughts of keeping in line with the reasonable requests that had been made of him. Yet the very same people who had been pushing this into his head recently were the ones who trained him for years to handle everything in a blink of an eye. He had to find her, and if she avoided his sight, then he would use everything else. The heavy smell of iron, the sheen of metal rubbing against its hidden sleeve, he sifted through everything as his senses locked back in on one person. With a snap of the air, Superman was instantly in front of the girl. Her eyes widened, her body reacting on instinct and slashing her weapon out towards him. Catching her wrist, swinging it around her back to restrain her, he squeezed just enough to force her to drop the blade. Whoa, what? Kirishima saw the spectacle appear before him. As Superman. Bakugo halted, whirling around at the mention of the name before seeing the obstacle himself restraining someone who had managed to sneak up on him. What the hell was he doing back here? And how did that chick sneak up on him? Don't try anything. Superman ordered her, the girl struggling in his grasp as her movements became desperate and erratic. Ah, come on. She whined out as she swung her legs back to try and hit a sensitive area. I was so close to. A loud buzzer rang out, all of the students' discs becoming blue as an automated voice rang out. The test has been paused. Remain where you are, and please await further instructions. Oi! Bakugo growled out, rooted in place and ignoring everyone and everything around him. What are you trying to pull here? Kami Utsushimi, instead of being confused or demanding her release, seemed disappointed instead. Please, I just want to have one little poke is all. Tamura wouldn't let me have my fun. Tamura? Bakugo felt his heart flinch as he realized who this bitch was. Hold on. Kirishima was beginning to catch up. You mean, the League of Villains, Tamura? No denial, no spiteful commentary, just a cheery, crazed smile that didn't belong on that face answered with childlike glee. Yep, I was given a special little mission here, and oh wait, I probably shouldn't tell you guys that. Oh, I'm so naughty sometimes. Hey, a group of heroes were running towards them, Vlad King leading the pack as he demonstrated far more urgency. What exactly do you think you're doing with one of the dash? Kin-sensei, Kirishima shouted as he pouted to the girl in panic. She's with the League. It's that girl who killed Aways. The man's alert demeanor became cold, the memory of the night, the reports he received, the search and discovery of the bodies. It nearly drove him into despair for failing to keep his students safe enough to see their parents again. While he was wary of Superman, he could hardly care what he was here for compared to the chance that this girl was. He was so cute. The captured student became more flushed. I wish I could have saved more of him, but the others just wouldn't leave us alone, so I could drink him, you dash. A raging fist came hurling towards her stomach, coming within inches of hitting her had her body not been pulled just out of reach. Vlad King, Superman's slightly risen voice piped up above the murmurs and the gasps. I know you have reason to be upset, but she needs to be taken straight into custody and questioned where Kami Utsushimi is right now. Vlad King was in agreement, reluctant to take orders from an unknown person with questionable origins, but the safety of the students was #1 priority. Okay, we'll take her from here and then dash. Superman. Yakumaru Mera stepped out from behind Vlad to directly speak to the hero, hardly an air of exhaustion around him. The examination conductor was down here already? That man never did anything if anyone else was already handling it or about to. Will you sweep the area for any other members of the League as we take care of things here? Yes, sir. Superman made sure to have a steady grip on Himiko Toga as he held her off to Vlad King, who used his quirk to entrap her in solid bindings from his blood. Oh, she squealed in glee at the sight. Your quirk is so pretty. Now wait. Vlad King spoke aloud and glanced towards the other members of his team. Leave this to the pros. We'll evacuate everyone here and then dash. The exam is not cancelled. Mera spoke against his direction. While a villain might have been found, she was caught before her plan could be completed. If there are any more around, they will simply be captured and taken away. No point in wasting everyone's time showing up today. Hold on. Vlad King made his disagreement incredibly vocal to where all the students around could hear them. We are not putting any of these kids at risk when highly dangerous dash. They're potential heroes. They know the risks. Mera cut him off, looking down at his phone as he began typing away at it. Some of them are very well aware and could have called it quits. We're not UA, we can handle villains. Don't tell me the HPSC has a clean record, Vlad retorted, his already boiling emotions becoming volatile. We still have the highest safety rating and we've undergone dash. Hey, the girl in his grip spoke up. Instead of arguing, why don't we have some fun? Vlad was about to yell in her face, uncaring for any sense of emotional control against the villainess until his mind flared in danger. The edge of a knife came right for his face, until a pair of fingers clenched around it, twisting the metal in an undeniable grip. Everyone jumped, barely having any time to react before it was handled. The disguise of Kami had vanished, melted away to leave a smaller, thin girl in her place that slipped through the makeshift chains. Superman, yet again, had intervened at the last moment, keeping her routed with just one hand around her wrists and another to keep Vlad from losing an eye, or worse. Boo! Himiko whined as she pouted towards the invulnerable boy. You're no fun. Superman chose to ignore her and distinctly look away from her now naked form. I swept the area 5 times over. No other villains are present. Good work. Mera motioned for a couple of heroes with proper restraints to come forward, taking the girl into formal custody. Vlad King was left stunned. His previous outrage simmered as he was left with shock. Please accompany the girl to the transport to make sure nothing else happens. Afterwards, you can do whatever, but be back in time for the second trial. Sir, with permission, I'd like to join in searching for Kami Utsushimi. Let me get back to you on that. Understood. Superman walked off with the other heroes in the back, keeping a firm eye on any possible disruption like he was already a pro. Vlad King didn't know how to react to that, seeing someone that were the same age as his students already being used as a frontline hero. No backup, unusual supervision, and the HPSC had such confidence in him. Mera let out a yawn, his permanently exhausted persona coming back to the surface. Welp, that was tiring. Hope I don't have to say this again, but we have more confidence that students won't die under his watch compared to you. Vlad King might have avoided being assaulted, but he still felt a knife twist in his gut that made him feel unease. He took another glance towards the students from many schools, then to the ones he was directly over now. Could he really protect them anymore? He failed before, many times in recent events, and just today, after he finally got over the latest attack, it almost happened again. How could he keep them safe? He didn't know, but Superman proved he could even when All Might himself failed. Looking back to someone who might know more about this rising hero, Mera was talking with another agent of the HPSC who was showing him a tablet. Glancing a little closer, he saw an image of Superman next to former students of UA in the stands, right before he captured the villainess. A finger landed onto the nervous girl who was standing next to him, Achiko Uraraka. For whatever reason, the HPSC now had special eyes on the girl. Despite that little break, their stamina didn't recover that quickly. The hero students of UA was still ambushed at every corner as soon as they gave the all clear to continue. Bakugo felt his natural battle instincts were out of sync with his body, that damn image of the fake constantly flickering to his mind. Anytime he was attacked, anytime he fought back, anytime he was on the brink of victory, the image of Superman looking down from him above after he won in the blink of an eye. How was he supposed to be number one when Superman could just swoop in at any moment and do anything he wanted before anyone else could blink? Bakugo's 3 discs became green. He got to move on to the second round. Just barely. He didn't even place in the top 10. He could barely keep up, pushing himself to just achieve a passing score. This wasn't victory. This wasn't being the best. It was hardly any better than losing. Then, a question came to his mind, one so terrifying that it made him freeze in horror. Was he not the best? It's a shame Yui couldn't make it. Hananuki said nearby. The remnants of UA gathered together. I tried to help, but we were overwhelmed. It's all crap. Manga heard, shaking his head in self-disappointment. I was supposed to watch her back, but then that one guy just got on my nerves when he brought up Dash. Hey, Kirishima pulled Manga into a comforting, manly hug. She'll get another chance. Her parents said they'd pull her from heroics if she couldn't pass this exam. Bakugo overheard Manga's words, a terrible reminder of what he promised to his own parents. He was determined to stay in UA. He would do his best to do so, but now he didn't see a future where that was possible. Not so long as that fake was standing in his way. Guys, Hagakure came running over to them, the gloves that were one of the few things visible on her person frantically waving around. I just heard one of the teachers mention that he found that girl. Looks like he got there right in time. What? Monoma turned over towards her. Which hero saved her? Superman. He left with one of the heroes and tracked her down immediately. I think he's on his way back right now. Bakugo nearly cracked his teeth by hard he clenched his jaw, his palms sweating, aching, as his heart kept beating madly as that bastard kept making everyone fawn over him. How was he supposed to become the number 1 hero if everyone kept looking up at Superman? Chapter 7. Izuku had several years of intense training with the HPSC. Over half of his waking hours, all that time spent going over his strength, speed, precision, control, awareness, all down to the finest of details as possible. Combat in high-stress situations was always pressed the most, drilling into his head to the point where it was like flipping a switch. Disabling threats was number 1 priority, but to Izuku it was driven by a different goal. Help people, save people, protect people, to the point where just smiling can make their worries go away. That's why he loved All Might so much. That's why he wanted to be a hero all his life. But how did All Might smile in moments like this, where he came across a bleeding girl zip-tied to a rusty pole in a warehouse, gagged, blinded, with some sharp objects still plunged into her limbs, smiling for her felt cruel. He was just glad she seemed to be unconscious from a basic sedative in her system. All the embarrassment to rushing to the girl's home address to find an article of clothing to trace the smell of across the city suddenly didn't matter to him anymore. Officially, he was just there to help heroes to find her, but he wanted to do more. Superman needed to do more than just show up before someone died. He needed to arrive in time to save them. He needed to be so much better than he was right now. Receiving a message on his phone, he saw that his current HPSC supervisor was requesting he return to the testing grounds. That's where he would see if he was good enough to be needed. So with one lingering gaze to the girl now in the back of an ambulance being checked over, Izuku knew he wasn't needed here anymore. In a gentle gust of wind, he disappeared from the scene. Shoto Todoroki wasn't oblivious to the challenges for the test. He just knew he could pass them. There were plenty who tried to tag him out, and some of their quirks were too good at countering his ice. Yet, because of all of the attacks he had faced, he learned a precious lesson. When in any doubt, don't hold back. It was a simple, effective one. Hit hard, hit fast, before your enemy realized what was happening. He briefly wondered if it was too close to what his father would do, but All Might demonstrated it at times as well. Even now, this Superman that the HPSC was obviously pushing used the same tactic. It got Todoroki through the first round, eventually, but right now he was struggling to figure out how to help people. This second part was harsh, not because there was a threat, but because scattered employees playing the part of civilians in a disaster had several critiques. "You froze my leg in there," an older man screamed into Todoroki's ear. "You didn't even know I was pinned under that chunk of rock before you just froze it all and stuck me there. Then when you finally broke me out, you didn't say anything to comfort me or assure me. You didn't even ask if I was in any pain. How are you supposed to save lives when you're just treating them like slabs of disposable meat?" Todoroki denied it, but didn't say anything. There was no point. He went in, saw the man was okay enough to struggle and yell at him, and determined he was in no immediate danger or injury. It's not like his father, who would dismiss a life and just get someone else to take care of the civilians. Yet, glancing towards a different part of the area, he saw a different story. Superman had lifted a corner of the building, blowing a chunk of ice to form under it before lowering a hand to help those who were stuck under it out. He wasn't saying anything more than a couple words, and they weren't yelling at him. He wasn't confirming if they were hurt or not, and they weren't yelling at him. Why were they being so biased? As Todoroki arrived to the assigned medical relief area with a very grumpy old man, Todoroki took his arm away as soon as he could before starting to go back to grab others. Superman was carrying a whole group of civilians on a large slab of concrete, flying over with them before setting them down near the others. "Thank you, Superman," one small person, playing an ever-grateful child, called up to him. Superman just gave a smile and a nod, and they didn't dock him points for it. Todoroki rolled his eyes and was about to move away, but he paused, because Superman was looking over at the man he just helped. "What?" Todoroki bit out, Superman coming over to kneel next to a person he just rescued. "He has a metal knee with screws all through his leg," Superman said as the old man eyed the hero. Then, for the first time, Superman looked towards Todoroki. The bot hated that look. "You froze it, didn't you? Why does that matter? He's okay." Superman grimaced as he looked back to the leg, before addressing the fake civilian that had docked Todoroki several points. "I'm sorry, that must hurt a lot." "You're damn right it hurts," the old man screamed back at Todoroki. "My leg is so stiff I can't move it without feeling like it's going to rip apart." "I can warm it up," Superman offered. "It won't relieve all the pain right away, but it will help." "Oh, please do." The man whimpered, as if he was in actual pain. Did Superman just play along with the fake injuries? And if he made up some other ones, they went along with it? Superman began rubbing his hands together rapidly, turning them into a blur as the air started to steam around them. Once they were too hot to touch, he held them just above the man's knee as the warmth transferred gently through. "Thank you," the old man said as he relaxed on the mat. "That's some more bonus points for you." Superman seemed a little surprised by that. But this wasn't part of the test. This isn't part of the simulation. You're genuinely hurt. We're testing to see how you future heroes respond to people showing signs of distress and injury. The man corrected. "You're doing just fine." Todoroki was confused further, as Superman acted bashful over the compliment. Todoroki thought Superman was acting like his father at first. Then he thought Superman was just trying to throw his weight around and get more points. Maybe sometimes he acted like other powerful heroes and putting on a persona, but why was he acting like this now? Why was Superman so different from them, from anyone? Todoroki just thought the HPSC saw a powerful quirk and claimed it for themselves to use as their newest poster hero. He needed to know what made Superman so different, or how similar Superman might be to himself given how many quirks Superman seemed to have. Back up in the stands, eyes were watching their previous classmates. Well, Tiu only had one working eye, but she would make do. She did her best to stay neutral or simply support her class. Yet, it was difficult to do entirely. Bakugo was simply a jerk, yet despite all the ego he kept backing it up by never getting injured more than a basic scrape or bruise, usually from himself. Hard to support someone who routinely left his class to challenge villains that were attacking them. Same with another bicolored student, Todoroki, who she could tell had his own issues but remained as stubborn and self-focused as Bakugo. No sense of teamwork, and they both believed they could handle it all themselves. So what made Superman different? He was confident, wasn't working much with others besides occasional comments or questions, and certainly had strength enough to hold an equally big ego. But she didn't see an ego. So was it just confidence? Not the same that All Might had. All Might was bright, boisterous, announcing his presence with a booming voice, punch, and smile. Superman was rather plain in comparison by his demeanor. With a quirk as strong as his, why does it seem like he is more focused on others rather than declaring himself the strongest with words or attitude? Of course, you ask the other girl next to her, she would have a different story to say. He's amazing, Achiko said for probably the 100th time, nearly falling over the edge of the handrails. He's strong but gentle with all of them. He stabilized the buildings so they don't collapse, and found all the people trapped in hidden places. It's just like the rescue footage from the Kamino incident. He must have some quirk to enhance all his senses, so that he can see people. Otherwise, how else could he have spotted a villain disguised as another student? Yeah, that was crazy, Zero admitted as Tsu noticed his shaky hands. I mean, he already captured her before she did anything to us, but I can't help but feel like we almost had another incident happen, you know. No way. As long as Superman's here, he wouldn't let anything like that happen. Achiko didn't seem the slightest bit worried, despite what they all saw firsthand. Well, Tsu was only in class for roughly a week before she was stuck in the hospital for a while. He must be our age, right? Sato proposed. How come the HPSC trained him instead of him going to a hero school? Who else could Karo? Tsu pointed at the boy. Who knows how complicated his quirk really is, and given how strong they can be, he probably needs his own personal instructors and training equipment. UA has a lot, but they still teach us in groups. Well, Kaminari stretched out his hands as he spoke. I, for one, am just glad we finally have someone on our side. Villains are cheating, making their own nightmare quirk creatures. It's about time we had something to even the odds. Excuse me. A woman called up from behind, Tsu slightly shifting but not overdoing to see who it was. A lady in a suit with bright multicolored hair that constantly shifted hues, probably one of the employees here at the HPSC testing center. Hi, are you Uraraka? Yes. Achiko looked back to how she was positioned over the railing, immediately yanking herself away from it. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be leaning so far over the edge and dash. The woman gave out an amused chuckle, disarming the tension. It's okay, I didn't come up here about that. I wanted to talk actually about your luck. My luck? Achiko didn't feel very lucky in life. Given her parents' constant financial struggle, and even when she managed to get into UA with her parents sacrificing everything to support her dream, it got so dangerous there she had to leave. This isn't your first time seeing Superman, right? That brought up her spirits immediately. That's right. I got to see him in person only twice, but I'm the only one. So you have probably the most accurate opinion of him. The woman summarized, Achiko nodding along with brimming enthusiasm. Tsu wouldn't consider Achiko an accurate source for Superman information, though. Her bias was bleeding into everything, but she seemed mostly true. At least half of it. I was trying to look up some posts about him myself. The woman said with a defeated sigh. I tried to see if you had a social to talk about it, or gave an interview about your experience with him saving you personally. But I couldn't find anything. Oh, sorry. Achiko pulled out her clunky and battered flip phone. I don't really have a phone to use social media, and my parents didn't want media attention on the construction site. But you're a fan of Superman, right? The woman pressed, Achiko practically vibrating. I am. Are you too? Oh, I want to talk about him all day with everyone, but, hey, my friends can only listen to me talk about him for so long. Well, here. The woman pulled out a smartphone, presenting it to Achiko. Have my spare work phone. Wait. Achiko tried to deny the rather nice-looking phone. That's too much. I couldn't accept something like this. It's not like I paid for it. The woman continued, still offering it. We rotate through new work phones every other year, and so I find someone who needs one more than me to give my old ones. Plus, it's got everything one needs to make some killer videos to post with. The data plan should last you at least another year, so don't worry about that. Eyeing her own phone, and the new one, Achiko couldn't help but end up accepting the massive upgrade. She never imagined being able to hold something like it. Wow. Ciro peeked up in the phone. I don't even recognize it. Does the HPSC make their own phones? The woman didn't reply to him. In fact, she didn't even acknowledge anyone else. Her focus was just on Achiko and getting her the phone. Now, this isn't usually allowed. The woman started before nudging her chin towards the testing grounds. But, as a fellow Superman fan, I'll let you take a video of what's going on. Really? Achiko immediately started fumbling around with the phone, attempting to find the camera functions. Sure, the woman began walking back up the stairs. After all she turned back to Achiko, one last time with a satisfied grin. Every step he makes is going to be historical. Don't you want to capture every moment of it while you're next to him? Sue kept a close eye on the woman as she departed. Something about her felt off. What she did was kind and didn't seem harmful, but you couldn't believe someone went that far out of their way to find Achiko just because she happened to be around Superman one time. Oh, by the way, their exhausted announcer spoke over the intercom. There's another part to this test. Before she could dwell any longer on it, a sudden explosion went off at the end of the arena. Dozens of henchmen dressed in black all rushed into the area, and leading them was one of the top 10 heroes, Gang Orca. The situation is as follows. The villain returned to finish the job and eliminate the heroes who came to help who survived the first attack. Good luck, and don't let the villains get a hold of any of the injured. A short panic calmed down in Sue's chest, the girl convincing her body that this wasn't a real attack, it was a fake one. Ice and wind from different parts of the area began rushing towards the henchmen, but despite how big they were nothing compared to the bright laser that cut in front of them. Superman, flying above the scene, carved a trench between the villains and the rest of the mock ruins area. I don't want to hurt anyone. Superman spoke up towards them in a clear, stern voice. But I won't let you get any closer. Surrender, or you'll have to fight me. And me. A boy screamed as he flew up on a small tornado to try and match Superman's level. You really think you two can beat me? Gang Orca challenged as he rose a foot to cross the line. What cocky heroes you two are. I know I can. Superman threatened with certainty, with his shoulders back, posture straight, with fists clenched. It reminded Siyu of someone she met, someone who didn't seem brave enough to fight an ant, until he was threatened. Gang Orca took in a quick breath, stepping over the line, and it was finished. The air let out a snap, as Superman replaced Gang Orca's position with the hero smashed into the rear wall. Superman lowered his fist before his glowing red eyes gazed back towards the many henchmen in a silent warning. We surrender. One of them wisely got to his knees before holding up his hands. The rest were quick to follow, and once the last one gave up, Superman relaxed. He looked back to Gang Orca, and as if he was simply coming across the scene, he flew over towards the hero, slightly startled, before helping him out of the wall. Never mind, Superman took care of it. Whoa, Superman, Achiko cheered, the smartphone suspended in the air recording the whole thing as Achiko waved and screamed out for him. Sue couldn't help but notice there was a lot more going on here to unpack. Even the League of Villains infiltration here was an afterthought to Superman's presence. Everyone, was constantly being nudged to look his way and at nothing else. While everyone was looking at Superman, what were they missing? Right as the buzzer went off for the exam, Superman received a new text requesting him to report to HQ. In the time it would take someone to put a reply, he was already standing in front of the double doors. The last time he was here, he got a reminder about how big Superman was from the president of this facility. Nearly all doors and walls to private areas or conference centers had been properly soundproofed and covered in lead, so Izuku had no idea who was waiting for him inside. Nerves eating his gut from within, he knocked on the door, wincing at seeing he left a few indents in the sturdy material. Right then he knew he was feeling too nervous about this. The door was opened by Hawks, and Izuku immediately knew what the topic was about. Himiko Toga, member of the League of Villains. Her image was displayed on the primary monitors, primarily when she was transformed as one of the students. It eased him a little, seeing the president wasn't here, but a select few who served directly under her were. None of them looked very happy. How long were you there before you realized she was right next to you? One spoke up, Izuku looking down to the floor as he reported. I think it was about dash. Speak up, and speak clearly. Someone else ordered. 20 minutes? 22 and 48 seconds. A man corrected. A top-ranked priority villain was in the same room as you for 23 minutes, and you didn't even know. As she was transformed, and her quirk dash. Yet you can see past all of that. You can even smell past all of that, and you didn't notice despite her managing to get close enough to touch you. Do you even know what she was trying to do back then? His heart was racing, his eyes losing focus on everything, sounds rushing over him, but it was all just background noise compared to the commanding and berating ones in front of him. I dash. What about her victim? Be glad she was alive when you found her. Otherwise, if any one of those cuts were just an inch deeper, she could have bled out while you were gawking at a pretty face. And no, I wasn't dash. Izuku wasn't focusing on that. He still saved her, though. She was going to be okay, right? He wished he got there sooner. You're quick enough, strong enough, observant enough to pick up on these things, yet you allowed a villain an opportunity to kill again. He messed up. He was supposed to be better than this. Superman was supposed to be better. He was failing them, failing everyone, and he didn't even really save that girl. He just got lucky. He's sorry. He's bad at this and needs to be better. It won't happen again / he would be better / he messed up / this was a failure / he wasn't a good hero / he's sorry / he's a bad person. Superman. One of them called out to him, and Izuku had to focus on their words instead of the lessons he was trying to drill into his head. We expect much better of you, so much better. Yes. He nodded in defeat, agreeing about his lack of ability, of his capability. Izuku truly believed he wasn't doing a good enough job to be of any good. So when you start reporting for hero work tomorrow, be sure to always make our investments in making you a hero worth it. Izuku was a little surprised they would be putting him out in the field so fast. After all, a failure like this was huge. It just meant he had to try better, do more, always be vigilant. Superman had to be more than Izuku could ever be. I understand. Izuku bowed deeply towards them. Thank you for giving me this chance. It's not like we have a choice. One muttered as the higher-ups began to walk past him, not even sparing a glance towards his earnest and repentant bow. The public needs Superman now, even if the boy in the cape is still lacking of our needs. Izuku clenched his eyes shut as he couldn't dare look at them, look at anyone, because he didn't want to see how they looked at him. A failure. Someone useless. A Deku. Then, a gentle warm hand patted Izuku's back, lifting him up by his cape. Izuku opened his eyes to see Hawks, giving him a casual smile like nothing ever happened. That was pretty intense, wasn't it? Hawks said as he kept fiddling with Izuku's shoulder latch that clung to the cape. Being Superman is going to take a lot of hard work, more than any of us initially thought. Yeah. Izuku hung his head, ashamed that such a great hero as Hawks had to always give his time to help weak and pathetic Izuku out. You still have a hard time talking with girls. He teased, making Izuku blush in embarrassment. Look. Hawks nudged Izuku back up to look him in the eyes as he spoke in a lower volume. Just enough for Izuku to hear. I kept a lid on that hole, spilling a top secret about you to a girl you didn't know. But no more of that, okay? Otherwise, you would have had a real punishment, not like the grounding. That's right. He messed up again earlier. He was starting to make so many mistakes at this rate, he would lose count. But they know about that Uraraka girl. Hawks pulled him into a side hug as he walked the two of them out of the room, holding up a marker for him. You promised to sign something for her, didn't you? Or did you forget? He did forget. Izuku totally forgot, and it was his fault, and… Hey. Hawks pulled out Izuku's fist away from his body, aiding to uncurl his fingers out so he could put the marker in his hand. Look, you made a couple mistakes today, okay? It's important you know how to make it up to people when you do, though. So start with this girl. Show her you are willing to make up for leaving in the middle of a conversation. Izuku gave another nod, focusing on the marker, on his mission. And when you're done, spend the night at your mother's. Hawks added, Izuku snapping his face back up to a more friendly smile. You were grounded for a while, and she missed you during that time. Show her that card you earned, proving you're a hero now. Finding a smile of his own again, the self-doubtful thoughts becoming a dull noise in the back of his mind, Izuku sought out to correct his mistakes. Hawks remained as Izuku flew off in a controlled and observable manner. The pro hero knows he'll get an earful later about this conversation, but someone had to pick up on the slack of the emotionally dull adults who never had to deal with kids. It wasn't long after that the exam ended. Many students arrived and failed, but hopefully many of them learned something important. Even those who managed to pass and finally got a hold of a license that signified their worthiness to be a hero, they saw who they were competing against. Yet, for a select few who had fought for this, even with their lives, they clung to a victory with joy. We did it. Hagakure leapt onto Kirishima's back, the two spinning around with laughs of themselves and many other classmates and former ones with them. Eat your heart out, League of Villains. Manga held his card up high, showing it to the heavens. We're going to be the best heroes the world ever saw by taking you down. That's if Superman doesn't get them first. Achiko pointed out with a skip, rewatching the video she took of Superman earlier on her new phone. She was definitely going to make a social media account on every app already pre-downloaded on her phone and share that video, talk about it, and look for even more on the internet. Ugh. Kaminari held a hand up to his ears. We get it, he's cool, so please stop talking about him. I don't want to agree with him. Jiro started. But you've been fangirling so hard for so long now. Hey. Mina twirled around, pulling up Momo to the front of the group. He helped out our girl here, so he's okay with me. Though, as Momo tried to be happy with the rest of them, she was still disappointed by her loss. Kodai was silently hanging along their group, while Todoroki and Monoma had gone straight to the bus with Bakugo. Though Bakugo passed, so they weren't sure what he was so upset about. It's been a lot of fun, Sato commented as he addressed their group. But we should probably get going now. My parents are waiting for me. Same here, Karo. Sue mentioned as she saw her father waiting in a nearby car. When a shadow passed overhead, it made her look over towards the source out of idle curiosity. Then she saw what the rest of them were seeing slowly drifting towards them through the air. Superman had returned, for whatever reason, and landed in front of them. If you all are busy with something, I can come back and dash. Not at all. Achiko barreled through her classmates, practically squashing Hananuki as she rushed up only to act all timid and shy in front of Superman. You, what did you come back for? You actually. He tensed up as he realized what he said. Fumbling in his belt for a marker, he hastily yanked out as Achiko turned bright red. Why you asked me to sign something? But then I was busy dealing with Toga, and then the rest of the test. And I had to go handle something, but I can sign something for you now? That's if you still want me to dash. Yes. Achiko restrained herself from dancing on the spot. Yes, please. Okay, yeah. He seemed to cheer up a little at that, the rest of the class watching in awe, amusement, or standard politeness not to interrupt. I haven't done this for anyone yet. I just need something to sign but dash. His cape fluttered with the wind, catching his attention before he settled his sights firmly on it. In a swift move, he tugged the corner up, signed it, and yanked the whole thing off as it snapped from his shoulders to hold it out to her. Does this work? This dash, Achiko took the sacred item in hand, staring at the S emblem on the back with a neat and humble signature on the bottom corner of the cape. This is great. Super. Thank you so much. I promise to find something nice so I can hang it up on my wall and wake up to it every morning. He didn't know how to react to that. None of them did. But Momo stepped up and gave a polite bow to him. Thank you again. She spoke in polite appreciation. You helped cheer me up, and I promise to give it my all with the remedial exam. I look forward to working with you, Superman said before glancing up to the rest. All of you, whether you're UA or not, past today or the next time, I think you all will be great heroes. I would be honored to work alongside you. Man, Manga whispered over to Hananuki. If Tetsu or Kirishima were here, they would probably say something about manliness. Excuse me. Their teacher had exited the bus, approaching Superman from behind as the young hero turned around. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you some questions. Superman hesitated, running over the options in his mind before spotting a distant clock. Sorry, but I'm sure whatever you want to ask you can bring up to Mr. Mera. I have somewhere I need to be. Vlad King didn't attempt to stop Superman as he hovered up before cracking the sky with his sudden burst of speed. The man gave a short sigh before looking back to the students. All right, say your goodbyes for the day. We appreciate those of you who came out to support your fellow classmates who are still in UA. It's a shame we couldn't keep all of you. A chorus of goodbyes echoed around, Tiu having her arm brought under Mina's shoulder as the pink girl intended to carry her to the car. Not before showing Tiu, she had been recording Achiko and Superman's interaction. Achiko still peeking up at the sky, just over the cape she rested her face against. Achiko, Mina called put playfully and loud enough to get the girl out of her trance. What? Achiko flipped around and immediately noticed Mina recording. Instead of being embarrassed or shy, she locked eyes with Mina. Please send that to me. Superman, Izuku Midoriya now, had changed out of his costume and back into some casual clothes. He had long had a quirk flying license under his own name, so he wouldn't accidentally leak he was Superman to any hero that stopped him by having to show his recently earned provisional hero license that was strictly under Superman. The photo wasn't even the one they took at the exam. It was a different one he knew was from the PR department that edited one of many photos they took of him as they were testing to find the perfect makeup for him. Izuku saw the man in the photo and could hardly recognize him. No messy curly hair, the gel making it dark enough to come across as black. No freckles, just prominent cheekbones. Finally, eyes that held confidence and assurity. Slipping his key inside, Izuku knew he was too late to bring any dinner home as he walked in. His mother had already been waiting nearby, getting up to immediately embrace him in a loving hug. Oh, I missed you so much. I missed you too. She could tell right away something was bothering him. His mother pulled back enough to look at him and became worried. Did something happen at the exam? A lot of things, all of them were his fault. I made some really big mistakes. Inko pulled him over onto the couch in the cozy cabin, having him sit and relax before pressing for more information. Did you not pass? I did. Izuku pulled out his card, fulfilling his task to show his mother the license. But there was a villain there I caught too late. A real one? Yeah, and dash. Are you hurt? No. He shook his head as he went on, fearful of how his mother would reprimand him. She was disguised as someone else with a transformation quirk. She was right there, hidden for 23 minutes until I finally realized who she was. I was so late to notice. She didn't say anything, not yet, just listening. Some part of him couldn't hold anything back anymore, so he told her it all. How he failed to notice the villain at first, how he failed to keep his identity a complete secret to someone, how he failed to remember a promise on his own, and how he failed to help that captured girl sooner. It was only when he ran out of his current list of mistakes of the day that Inko spoke. Izuku, you didn't fail. His mother brushed her fingers across his freckled chin. You noticed that villain before anyone else did. Not the security checks, not the professional and experienced heroes. You saw her before anyone else, and you stopped her before she could hurt anyone. You saved people. You helped someone when they were down, going out of your way, and told her exactly what she needed to hear by being honest. You even went out to volunteer to save another student who needed a hero, and you got there to get her help. Her parents are probably wondering how they could ever thank you enough. But I dash. And then to top it all off, you still went to give someone something as small as an autograph, all because they asked. With a nudge of her palm, she brought his eyes to look up at her teary ones. His mother smiled lovingly towards him, praising him and loving him. You did what no one else did that day. Even before you got a plastic card to say what I already know. You're a real hero. I wasn't enough, though. Izuku backtracked as he remembered what he was told earlier that day. I made mistakes. I can't do that while being Superman, I dash. Izuku. Inko softly called his name to get his full attention. No yelling, no demanding, and it made her words so much louder for him to hear. You are human and will make mistakes, but don't let anyone tell you that you aren't enough. Not even yourself. She pulled him into her shoulder, Inko sniffling at her tears as she held on to her precious child, who struggled and fought so hard because he thought it might make the world a better place. You make me so proud, Izuku. You have always been more than enough to bring me so much joy in my life. I don't know what I ever did to get such a selfless, amazing hero in my life. Instead of spouting off more reasons for his incompetence, how he wasn't who she thought he was, Izuku let it all pass as he hugged her back. At the end of the day, he trusted her, and he would work to be a better hero because someone believed he already was. And if anyone ever tells you that you aren't enough, that you're not a hero, or that you aren't a good person, you stop listening to them and remember what I'm saying right now. Inko then leaned down so that she could whisper into his ear words that he would cement into his mind. I will always be watching and cheering you on, because I believe you are already the best hero in the whole world. Though far across the country, into the deepest pits of the Hero Public Safety Commission, they had listened on this private moment. Through every device with a camera, a microphone, anything that they could tap into, they watched Inko and Izuku through. And they were seeing their work being undone by a single woman who had just turned herself into something more than an acceptable nuisance. Inko Midoriya was becoming a problem. Chapter 8. Bakugo had seated himself in front of his parents in the living room, the provisional hero license resting on the coffee table between them. It was a tense silence that no one wanted to break, until finally, as his parents took one last silent conversation with one another, Mitsuki spoke. Katsuki, we gave you an impossible challenge. That made the boy confused, but he didn't say anything yet. He waited for them to explain themselves. When we said if you got the #1 score in the test, we would let you stay at UA. We talked with your teacher, asking about how the exam went and what happened. Neither of us realized there was a UA crush that pinned you against all the other schools. Yet, you still passed out of the hundreds of applicants. That itself speaks volumes about how capable of a hero you are. I didn't get first. Katsuki reminded them, oddly calm about the fact. We also didn't know Superman would be there. His father spoke, and then the calm vanished. So, Katsuki leaned forward, trying to push against the feeling of being so small under the mere mention of that fake #1. I didn't try hard enough to get the top spot. I lost. You didn't lose. Mitsuki grabbed his license, where the image of her son looking ashamed was present. You earned this. This wasn't just a UA thing. This was a certified HPSC testing center, and they think you can still be a hero. That doesn't matter. Katsuki stood up, palms quivering as he had the urge to blow something up. You said I had to be the best. Everyone said I was the best. And until Superman showed up, I was going to be Dash. You can't compare yourself to Superman. His father hammered down the truth, Katsuki flinching as if it physically hurt him. Katsuki, we just want you to learn somewhere that you can become the best hero you can be. We don't care if you get #1 or Dash. Do you even think I can do it, though? Katsuki screamed back, searching his parents for the confidence they always had in him, that everyone had in him to be the best. Do you no longer think I can be the #1 hero because of that caped bastard? Stop obsessing over trying to be #1. Mitsuki ordered as both she and her husband were startled by Katsuki's focus of his outburst. You can still be a great hero even if you never get the #1 spot, or the second, or even the 50th. We don't care about that. They didn't care. They didn't believe in him anymore. All his life, he was told by everyone he could be the best. Even when shit hit the fan too many times with UA, they still believed in him. Until Superman showed up, and suddenly there wasn't a reason for anyone to believe in Katsuki Bakugo anymore. Did he even believe in himself anymore? Look, Katsuki. His father held up the card in front of the boy, the one giving him permission to go out and be a hero. If you want to be a hero, we support you. We just want you to come home, and if things get too hard, then understand that you're human. If UA can really improve its security, give us the confidence they can still make you a better hero and keep you safe, we'll let you stay. His father then went to turn on the TV, just a random channel as he pointed towards the scene. Superman was already out there, rushing into a robbery before tossing each villain out in makeshift restraints. There will always be people out in the world that you feel like they can do things better than you. You just have to accept your own abilities and limitations and find the best way to use what you have. So what do you have? Katsuki couldn't focus on what his father was saying. He could only see how in just one day of being given a legal piece of plastic, Superman was already doing more than Katsuki was. It wasn't fair, it wasn't right. This isn't what his life was supposed to be, some sideshow just to make the new star look more impressive by comparison. He refused to be a side character, but he didn't see a way to take back the spotlight. Check, check. Line 1 secure. Line 1 secure. Check on body camera. Body camera good. Image check. Image looks good. Are we clear with uniform? Uniform double checked and good. Handler ready. Handler present, awaiting crime reports. Are we green? Green across the command center. Handler, Superman ready? Taking a deep breath, opening his eyes as the world came back to his senses, Izuku Midoriya let go of himself before embracing Superman. Superman ready. Superman, you are clear for patrol. Be sure to slow it down enough for the public to see you in action. Confirmed. Handler. Superman stepped up to the top corner of the tower that was the HPSC skyscraper, Hawks doing his stretches nearby as he was getting ready for his own patrols. This is your third day now. Hawks was striking up casual chat before they flew out for their own duties. You miss me being your primary handler? Lana is nice. Superman began scanning the city around him, looking out for the smallest disturbances and keeping the priority checklist in mind for what situations the HPSC wanted him to pick first. She's maternal. I heard she always wanted her own kid. Hawks flexed his wings, a few feathers floating around him. I also heard she's single. Superman shook his head, familiar with how Hawks always tried and failed to retain a girlfriend. Please don't date my handler. Superman dash. His handler Lana spoke through the unique frequency beamed through the air that only he could pick up. We have a 1280 in progress. 56 kilometers due SW 230 degrees. Confirm. Copy. 1280 at 56 kilometers southwest 230 degrees. Superman went to business, turning around and narrowing his vision to see an out-of-control vehicle. Inside was someone clearly under a heavy influence while trying to get the panicked passenger to open up his pants. I have visual, DUI with DD, IE, and soon to be SA. Well then you better stop it before it becomes an SA or a VMS. Lana informed in a more personal manner rather than cold numbers and information. Hawks shielded his eyes as Superman burst from his position, a gust of wind rushing after him. Cape flapping against the high speeds, Superman swerving between buildings as his shadow zoomed over those below, making them look up just in time to catch a glimpse of his person before he was gone. Leveling his speed to public viewing cruising, Superman kept his eyes on the target so that if things escalated he could dart in to stop it if need be. Did it go against his standard combat training to slow down so everyone could see him? Yes. But the HPSC was making it clear that if people were to trust and believe in Superman, they had to see him in action as much as reasonably possible, which meant going a fraction of his usual speed. He was fine with that, because that meant Mom could watch him, cheer him on. She believed in him, and he would make her proud. When the wheel jerked in the driver's hands, making the car veer towards a sidewalk, Superman let go of his restraints for a moment. In the next, he was gripping the corner of the car in front of the pedestrian, pushing it up and back over towards the road. Pedestrian okay, civilians inside jostled but uninjured. No immediate threats present to postpone the primary objective. Just before all four wheels of the car could land back on the road, Superman flew right under it. grabbing the structural parts of the frame before hoisting it up, flying with its momentum while bringing it to a gentle stop midair. He held his position, giving the people inside a chance to calm down as everyone began to notice. Over 50% observers achieved, continue objective. Lowering himself in a dramatic fashion, he started to set the car down, but the driver inside slammed on the gas. The tires squealed out, but Superman held the front to not let it go anywhere. Superman flicked up the hood, reached in, and ripped the engine out with one hand to cut out its power, setting it to the side and marching over towards the door. Quote the following dash, Lana cut in, and Superman knocked on the driver window before saying the following. License and registration, please. He might have sounded a little too stiff, but the light-hearted jab still carried as everyone around began clapping for their hero of the day. Police are en route and video is being submitted to the local precinct. Good work. Superman bit his tongue to prevent saying thanks out loud again for the 10th time. Instead, he checked on the passenger, helping them out as their legs shaked as the driver still tried to catch his swimming head. As soon as the police arrived, Superman pointed them to the driver, gave a wave towards those watching, before moving on to the next task. He would do good, because Mom was watching. Mom was cheering for him. Make her proud, make her happy, he told himself as he rocketed to his destination. A couple miles away, a child was falling from a playground. Swoop in, catch, remind them to be careful long enough for someone to pull out a phone and capture what's happening, and be off. Mom was watching. He wouldn't let her down. Up in the north, a villain with a speed quirk was on a purse-snatching spree. Snatch him, check purses for the IDs, and return them to each of the persons before flying off. Mom was cheering for him. He would make her proud. He went to everything, everywhere, from all the crime reports, villain attacks, or other disturbances that were called into the HPSC, to him coming across every lost child or struggling civilian. Superman proved to be able to handle it all. That's what the people saw. It's what the heroes saw. It's what the world witnessed. It's what he wanted his mom to see, so that she wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. With the television on, a laptop, the television from the other room, a smartphone, and several monitors from any nearby computer set up, the living room of the former #1 hero was starting to look unrecognizable. As Toshinori Yagi clicked open his front door and came across the scene, he questioned if Melissa was attempting to turn his housing situation into a lab. The head of Blonde was in the center of it all, standing with her keyboard over one of her arms and typing away while examining the several screens. Melissa, he called out to the girl, who didn't seem to hear him. She had her headphones on. Hobbling over with his cane, he tapped the closest screen, which wobbled unsteadily in place. It caught Melissa's attention, who went to stabilize the monitor with her hand before realizing she wasn't alone anymore. Taking off her headphones, she nervously looked back to her whole setup. Sorry, sometimes the extra screens help me organize my thoughts. Holograms are a lot harder to afford outside Island. I can look into getting you a holo computer, Yagi offered as he couldn't help but laugh over how absurd the setup was. What have you been looking into? Figuring out if All for One is connected to Superman. Now, the thought did occur to the retired hero that might have been a possibility given how many quirks this new #1 seemed to have. Yet, all logic seemed to dismiss it given it didn't fit All for One's habits. Only All for One can handle so many quirks, and he would never give up that kind of strength demonstrated by Superman. The Nomu were the closest thing to housing so many quirks, and they had to become inhuman to do so. Yet, the boy was fine and demonstrated prioritizing lives around himself. Not to mention, All for One wouldn't willingly take a beating like that or allow it to interrupt his revenge. While everything besides multiple quirks disconnected Superman from All for One, Yagi would still give Melissa a chance. She was a smart girl after all. What did you find? Yagi pulled up a seat from the kitchen, slowly resting his withered body into the chair as he allowed Melissa to rotate several screens his way. We know that multiple quirks in a body would destabilize the genomes, literally rip them apart from the string. Melissa pointed to one complicated diagram. At best, a normal person could handle 3 quirks for a short time. Yet Superman has shown at least 5, arguably more or less depending on the exact nature of his quirks. She held up her phone, where a previous student of his has apparently started a blog all about Superman. Young Uraraka seemed enamored by the new hero and went to great lengths and depth to find out all she could about her new favorite hero. It used to be 13, but sadly the rescue hero had passed in poor Uraraka's arms. You don't think it could just be one extremely versatile quirk? Not with the level of strength behind them. My dad, he had all sorts of theories about quirk power. He used you as an example for half of them. While quirks are getting stronger, overall there's still plenty of limits one quirk can do. In short, the stronger a quirk is, the more simple the mechanic and application it can be. Yours is rather simple, a stockpile that enhances your general use of it. Speed, durability, strength, and I bet if you trained you could have developed some super senses while you were at it. Otherwise, you would never process what's happening while moving at the speeds you've demonstrated in the past. He never thought that one for all could be applied like that. He would have denied it given his experience. But now that Yagi considered how he could see things moving faster than a normal person could perceive, he would need to have some enhanced quick thinking and reaction time. Superman, though, Melissa turned around the television, showing the lasers he used, the icy breath he had, and what he presumed was him looking through several layers of concrete. Has entirely different abilities that have shown no crossover or transition use from some base ability. Some speculate he might have a telekinetic ability to perform the flight, strength, and speed, but his muscle groups are too well developed and being used during those moments. He has multiple quirks, and he might have gotten them from different people before. People connected to All for One. Now that caught All Might's attention. Explain. Melissa quickly brought the other television around, showing some old documents and barely captured photos of people from different times of the quirk era. One of them he recognized. Nana. It was hard to track down some of these. Melissa started, pointing to the different faces. Yet because All for One isn't a worldwide secret, files have been declassified, or old ones now being connected to his past exploits. These heroes have a weirdly close timeline, where they could easily overlap with one another in a distinct order in time and location. They also happen to have another connection. They all were getting exponentially stronger and noticed by the public, until suddenly disappearing or dying in an unseen conflict that has had increasing damage to the vicinity. She clicked a button, and the list of their quirks were shown. Frost Breath, Sensory Overdrive, Optical Spectrum, Cellular Optimization, Float. I'm still working on filling in some of the gaps. Melissa admitted, but was confident in her information. The cell optimization quirk seemed to be vague, but effective in pretty much making the user a peak human in self-healing, metabolism, and making each organ several times more efficient than the average person's. Optical spectrum might be the X-ray vision and lasers, given it's shooting out spectrums of light from the eyes that could have a variety of applications. But the fact that Superman has all these quirks that are significantly stronger than the recorded users in the past leads me to believe that somehow there's a generational stockpiling quirk similar to yours that gathered up all of these quirks and rolled them into one technical quirk used to gather strength and apparently quirks to fit into one user. She paused her rambling once she spotted Yagi's jaw hanging. The man couldn't believe it. He never heard much about the previous users of One for All, but this all matched everything he knew and answered every question he could have had. One for All somehow managed to hold on to the quirks of the previous users, and on top of all that strength he wielded himself, it was now in someone else's possession. It made sense why he couldn't feel the quirk's presence anymore, because he didn't even have it. It's why he's gotten progressively weaker these past few years. Melissa didn't even know about One for All, but if given enough time she probably would have figured it out. Yet, before he could say anything, there was one glaring question he had, the most important one. How did Superman get a hold of One for All? Melissa. He leveled both hands on his cane, feeling pride for her and foolishness of his own blindness. This answers many questions, and more than you realize. I know of this quirk, I had it myself. Melissa's face scrunched up in bewilderment before a shocking revelation came to her. Superman has your quirk. That's why he's so strong. And all the other quirks they belong to past users of mine. He affirmed. It's called One for All, And I don't know how, but Superman has been able to access the past user's quirks, enhanced by One for All. I don't know how he came about my power, but dash. An emergency alert came to his phone, to Melissa's, and nearly every screen in the room. It wasn't a villain, it wasn't a missing person alert, it wasn't even an invasion. No, it was a natural disaster, one that no hero could reach in hopes of stopping it. Not even in his prime, could All Might imagine facing off against a meteorite. The middle of the Hero Public Safety Commission had been at full alert for over 24 hours, chatter and communications racing through the entire facility as Izuku tried just to focus on his mission. This wasn't like when he was told to handle a villain beating All Might. This was something that could wipe out Japan. Two employees were checking over his most durable costume yet, another polishing up his head with a cosmetic quirk and the stickiest and most